Hey guys, picture this. You're standing on the banks of the Nile, the sun roasting your sandals to a crisp, and every shadow you see could be a deity plotting your doom or your overnight deification. Welcome to ancient Egypt, the land where gods had more drama than your favorite reality show, and mortality was basically optional. Before you get comfortable, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do. Drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's dive together into today's journey. Let's begin with Ra, the sun god who wakes up every morning like a cosmic rock star. Imagine rolling out of your celestial bed, flicking your golden mane, and deciding whether to roast half the world or just light up your daily chariot ride. Every dawn, he cruises across the sky in his solar boat, battling serpents that symbolize chaos. Think of it as Godzilla versus a boat. And by sunset, he dives into the underworld, enduring the ultimate karaoke night of groans and whispers before rising anew. His daily commute was the most dangerous job in the cosmos, yet he still managed to look radiant. Next up, Osiris, the guy who invented the concept of coming back stronger. Osiris was the king of the living until his brother Set decided sibling rivalry had reached unacceptable levels. Set chopped him to pieces, really went full horror movie gore, and tossed him into the Nile. But Isis, Osiris's wife and ultimate DIY enthusiast, scooped up his bits and fashioned him back together. Cue the world's first patchwork king. Osiris then ascended to become lord of the underworld, judging souls with the same meticulous care an accountant uses for tax season. His resurrection story became the OG marketing pitch for eternal life. Now, let's talk about Isis because she deserves her own spotlight. She's the patron saint of resourcefulness, gathering her husband's body parts, learning magic spells that would make Hogwarts weep, and parent-teacher conferencing her son Horus to greatness. She was the blueprint for every action mom ever, fierce, magical, and capable of turning a tragic murder into a family reunion. People worshipped her so passionately that even centuries later, Roman emperors tried to co-opt her cult. That's right, when your influence outlives a civilization, you know you've made an impression. Speaking of Set, the original bad boy of Egyptian mythology, let's not forget his resume: chaos, storms, and plot twists that leave you wondering if the ancient scribes were binge writing a soap opera. He once impersonated Osiris to father an evil child, provoked battles that lasted generations, and spent most afternoons brooding in his desert palace. If you needed to ruin a harvest, stir up a sandstorm, or just ruin someone's whole vibe, Set was your go-to deity. Some folks thought he was kind of overkill, but hey, drama sells. Horus, the falcon-headed son of Osiris and Isis, was the cosmic freelancer who took on Set in a series of battles so epic they'd put Marvel to shame. After his father's gruesome demise, Horus grew up schooled in vengeance and gradually faced his evil uncle in contests that ranged from fistfights to wrestling matches in murky marshes. His eye, the famous Eye of Horus, got gouged out, magically restored, and then became a symbol of protection, basically the ancient equivalent of finger guns, but way more badass. Egyptians plastered the symbol everywhere, like they couldn't get enough of Horus's eye makeup. But wait, there's more. Hathor, the goddess of love, beauty, and questionable nightlife choices, was often depicted as a cow or a woman with cow's ears. She hosted afterlifers in the field of reeds for dance parties so wild that Osiris himself would show up. Want to party for eternity? Hathor was your hostess with the mostess. She also gave humanity beer, which sounds innocent until you realize they brewed it in vast quantities as offerings. Imagine all you can drink for Ra, and you get the picture. Then there's Thoth, the ibis-headed scholar who chronicled every cosmic shenanigan and kept the universe's scorecard. Without him, Egyptians wouldn't have hieroglyphs, and we'd all be guessing what those little pictures of birds and snakes meant. He was also the god of the moon, so every night he had to juggle accounting and light shows. His devotion to record-keeping set the stage for bureaucracy, so thank or blame him next time you're stuck filling out a form. Anubis, the jackal-headed embalmer, was the ultimate mortician. He presided over mummification with the solemnity of a funeral director who's seen one too many body eruptions. He weighed hearts against the feather of Ma'at, the concept of truth and cosmic balance. If your heart was too heavy with sins, you'd get chomped by Ammit, a creature part hippo, lion, and croc. Morale of the story: don't overindulge in cruelty, or you'll be snack for a mythical beast. Now, don't forget Bastet, the cat goddess who protected homes from evil spirits and mice. Basically the original House of Purr. She transitioned from a lioness warrior to a sweet house cat, becoming every ancient Egyptian's Instagram-worthy pet deity. They built her temples, dressed statues in cat jewelry, and even mummified cats in her honor. When people adore a cat more than themselves, you know the grooming game is strong. Sobek, the crocodile god, made sure the Nile stayed productive and terrifying. Farmers invoked him to prevent floods from smashing their crops and unleash crocodile worship that involved giant statues and big, toothy smiles. Worshipping a creature that could eat you whole might sound like a bad idea, but hey, better to mollify your local apex predator than become its lunch. Nephthys, the lesser-known sister of Isis and wife of Set, had a softer side once you ignored her siding with her husband. She aided her sister Isis in reconstructing Osiris and comforted the dead. She's the understudy who never got the lead role, but always showed up behind the scenes, sprinkling moral support like celestial confetti. This is just the opening act in our theatrical pantheon. You've met the core 9 of Ogdod and Ennead fame, but Egyptian mythology sprawled across thousands of localized deities. Sometimes every town had its own divine weirdo. There was Khnum, the potter who molded humans on his wheel; Montu, a falcon warrior god with anger management issues; and Shu and Tefnut, the eccentric brother-sister team who embodied air and moisture, respectively. Talk about a complicated sibling. Dynamic. Through all this divine drama, the Egyptians built temples that rival modern malls in scale, complete with obelisks and hypo-style halls that doubled as Instagram backdrops. Priests maintained the gods' needs, changing their clothes and feeding them daily offerings, because apparently gods get hangry too. The more lavish the temple, the more prestige it brought to a city, so local leaders competed in an ancient version of "my god is bigger than yours." Every festival felt like Comic-Con meets Mardi Gras. Feasting, processions, music, and public. Spectacles that sometimes ended with the desecration of effigies representing the enemies of Egypt. Talk about cathartic. Meanwhile, the average farmer just wanted a season without locusts and a little Nile flooding to water his crops. Modern archaeologists still scratch their heads over why Egyptians obsessed over death so much. Mummies, tombs, Book of the Dead scrolls. These people were dedicated to the afterlife like fans camping outside for concert tickets, but their meticulous burial practices have gifted us with extraordinary insights into their world, even if the walls of their tombs read like a cosmic instruction manual for how not to waste your soul. In this first chapter of our mythological roller coaster, we've barely scratched the surface. We've met the sun-roasting superstar Ra, the patchwork king Osiris, the do-it-all goddess Isis, the chaos connoisseur Set, the avenging Horus, and a cavalcade of supporting deities with more quirks than a sitcom ensemble. As you sit there imagining yourself worshipping a cow-eared hostess or negotiating peace with a crocodile god, remember, to ancient Egyptians, the line between survival and apocalypse was measured by whether you remembered to bake bread for your local shrine. And if you didn't, let's just say your afterlife plans might involve dinner at Amit's buffet. Stay tuned for part 2, where we delve into how these gods influence daily life, why you might bake a cake shaped like a hoe, how beer bribed your way into divine favor, and why your neighbor's haircut could be an insult to the cosmic order. Spoiler alert, it involves a lot more funerary cones than you'd ever imagine. Imagine waking up before dawn to the sound of a temple trumpet, technically a pair of conch shells banged together, because your local priest was up already, chanting praises to Sobek so the Nile didn't decide to swallow your fields. You fumble for your sandals, trample through the courtyard, and voila. Breakfast is a flatbread shaped like a miniature hoe. Yes, the ancient Egyptians literally baked miniature agricultural tools, because if you didn't, you might offend the god of fertility, Geb, and end up with fewer onions to trade at the market. Every bite was a sacrament, every recipe a subtle negotiation with deities who had zero tolerance for sloppy craftsmanship. By mid-morning, the townspeople would gather around shrines built into their homes, gifting statuettes of Bes, the squat, lion-faced demon who protected maternity wards, from bystanders who'd survived last night's childbirth unscathed. A quick libation of beer or wine, a whispered incantation taught by Thoth himself, and your mother could rest easy knowing that childbirth hazards were temporarily on hold. It wasn't optional. Skip your Bez offering and you risked your child's health, because in this world, magic was just as real as mortar and brick. Speaking of beer, ancient brewing was as serious as a siege. Egyptians treated beer like the nectar of the gods. Literally, you'd brew loaves of barley into a frothy, somewhat sour beverage that even the lowest laborer worshipped more than water. Every household had its own microbrewery, complete with tiny mud plaster vats and funnels carved from a papyrus reeds. At dawn, a wife might tip a pitcher of beer onto the ground as an offering to Hathor, hoping the goddess of joy would grant her household a drama-free day. Then she'd sip from the same pitcher, because gods deserved the first taste, but mortals needed the second. Market day shuffled in a different kind of ritual. You had to pay homage to Hapi, the Nile's personified flood. Before you sold your onions and geese, you'd pour a few drops of beer into a miniature basin carved with lotus flowers. Whisper, "May Hapi's waters rise but not drown us," and drop in a reed inscribed with your name. Only then could you set up your stall. If you skipped this step, you'd find your onions soggy, your geese gone, and perhaps the Nile's crocodiles enjoying a midnight snack in your courtyard. Barbershop banter wasn't just about the latest gossip, it was cosmic politics. Egyptians valued coiffure as more than vanity. Your hairstyle was your talisman. A perfectly plaited wig evoked Ma'at's balance. An uneven fringe insulted the goddess Nemti, who might send locust swarms in retaliation. Clients paid barbers in oil, incense, and tiny figurines of Ta, the craftsman god, begging him to keep the barber's hand steady and the scissors sharp. One stray hair on your forehead could doom you to cosmic imbalance and ensure everyone at work gave you the side-eye. Lunch meant feasting in honor of Sekhmet, the lioness goddess of vengeance, who could either soothe your fever or bring plague if you took her lightly. Households roasted ducks, drizzled them with honey, and arranged them on platters shaped like the sun disk, because Ra and Sekhmet had a complicated relationship. One misstep, and you'd end up with a famine. Another, you'd anger the plague bringer herself. So while you munched, you recited a memorized spell. Sekhmet, lioness fierce, grant us your healing roar, not your bloodlusted roar. Then you washed it down with more beer, because if you're going to negotiate with a goddess by your tongue, you might as well lubricate the deal. Afternoon chores blended the spiritual with the mundane. A weaver at her loom would dedicate each thread to Seishat, the goddess of writing, hoping each cloth she made carried a blessing of precision and durability. Farmers plowed their fields in the shape of the Ankh, the symbol of life. An agricultural origami aimed to please Osiris so that he'd ensure fertile soil. Cattle herders stopped at shrines to Taweret, the hippo-hippentar goddess of childbirth and fertility, leaving balls of dung as crude tokens of respect, an odd trade, but effective in a world where symbolism mattered more than aesthetics. As dusk approached, families prepared for the evening's small ritual. They'd light oil lamps inscribed with the eye of Horus and whisper a short petition to Khnum, the potter god who molded humans on his wheel. Khnum, fashion my heart light, lest it tip heavy, referencing the famed weighing of the heart. If their pleas were sincere enough, the afterlife jury, Anubis with his jackal head, might preserve their soul. Otherwise, Amit the Devourer would be waiting in the dark, eager for an extracurricular snack. Night wasn't just rest, it was a cosmic battle. Ra, after his journey through the underworld, needed offerings to refuel for the next dawn. Households left bowls of food at doorways, onions, fish, fowl, all arranged in solar patterns to catch Ra's attention. If you omitted the offering, you'd wake up sweaty and paranoid, convinced you'd angered the sun god. Meanwhile, Set prowled the desert edges, eager to snuff out Ra's light. Villagers told tales to children of a serpent named Apep, Ra's nemesis, to scare them into obedience, ensuring the family never missed a single nightly ritual. Festivals were the height of social life, equaling any modern county fair, but with far deadlier stakes. During Opet festival in Thebes, crowds paraded statues of Amun-Ra from Karnak to Luxor temple, chanting spells to guarantee the pharaoh's divine legitimacy. Merchants sold trinkets shaped like scarabs, symbols of Khepri, the sunrise, as talismans to ward off evil. Musicians played tambourines and flutes carved from bone, while shamans recited long incantations to ensure the Nile's flood remained moderate. One mispronounced word could transform the festival from a raucous celebration into sacrificial chaos. Then came the funerary cones, tiny mud caps set atop tomb entrances. They looked decorative, but each cone bore the name of a priest and a date, signifying which clergy performed that tomb's rituals. Tomb owners paid handsomely for more cones, signaling their wealth and piety. More cones meant more priests, chanting your praises in the afterlife, which mortals equated with social status. In life, you'd invite neighbors to chisel your name onto mud cones. In death, each cone whispered your legacy to the gods. Skimp on cones, and you might as well consign yourself to obscurity, or worse, have your heart denounced for cosmic laziness. By the time you collapsed into bed, a reed mat draped with linen savored for its scent, you'd offered something to at least half a dozen gods. Your dreams would be monitored by Meshenet, goddess of childbirth and destiny, who decided whether you'd live another day. If you'd been diligent with offerings, she'd deliver pleasant visions. Neglect her, and you'd groan through nightmares of scorpions and collapsing tombs. This was daily life, a delicate choreography of bribes, baked goods, libations, and literal liminal spaces between the divine and the mundane. Every chore, every meal, every haircut and hug to a cat statue was a calculated move in a cosmic chess game against capricious deities. And yet, somehow, Egyptians thrived for millennia under this divine bureaucracy, finding humor in ritual failsafes and forging a civilization that turned fear into creativity, devotion into architecture, and sorrow into satire. In their world, survival wasn't about brute strength or firepower. It was about remembering which gods you'd already fed today, lest you forget to kneel and wind up a cautionary tale etched on temple walls. As dawn's rosy fingers stretch over the horizon, the city of Thebes awakens in a haze of incense smoke and half-chewed figs. You scramble from your reed mat, still smelling faintly of last night's offerings to Ra, and remind yourself that today is not a day off, even though your joints feel like battered baskets. It's the day of the Valley Festival, when mortals briefly borrow immortality's punch bowl. You tumble into the courtyard to find your neighbor, Nakhti the scribe, already scribbling frantic petitions on ostraca, shards of pottery that serve as scrap paper. He's trying to convince Osiris that his soul is small enough to pass the scales without tipping. "If you jot that down, Horus," he mutters, addressing the scarab-shaped seal of the underworld messenger, "make sure Nakhti the humble is legible. I'm tired of being Nakhti the slightly above average." You pat him on the back, which is basically a gentle thwack that sends him reeling into a pile of straw. "Relax," you say. "Today we party in his honor, not fill out tax forms." Minutes later, you join the procession toward the mortuary temple. Thousands of citizens march behind the barge carrying Osiris's statue, chanting, "He lives, he dies, he rises again," with the enthusiasm of villagers cheering for a particularly unreliable chariot racer. At the front, the high priest waves a lotus-topped staff, looking as regal as a crocodile wearing royal sandals. The whole scene reeks of wet papyrus and old linen. Think backstage at an opera where everyone's trying not to cough on the soprano. As you shuffle along, you notice the standard bearers jostling for position. Each holds the emblem of a different nome, the local provinces of Egypt. They want their god's banner seen in the mural carvings that will commemorate this festival for eternity, or at least until the next time a flood wipes out the carvings. If you hail from the nome of Elephantine, you might suffer severe peer pressure to hoist your ibis feather fan higher than the jackal-headed contingent. It's a rivalry fiercer than any sandstorm. When the procession halts at the riverbank, priests fling offerings, loaves, fowl, and jars of unfiltered beer, onto the barge's gilded deck. The barge lurches like a drunken hippo, and you clutch your neighbor's tunic to avoid toppling into the mud. A chorus of temple singers belts out hymns to Amun-Ra, their voices echoing off the limestone walls. You look around for Osiris's statue, but all you see is a golden torso draped in linen. You wonder if you should throw in a fish or two, because nothing says divine favor like scaled offerings. But you're out of fish, and your neighbor reminds you that fish is for Sobek, not Osiris. After the river ceremony, you follow the statue along the causeway to the inner sanctum. Here, only priests and those wearing impeccably laundered robes may tread, Everyone else stands back, clutching tiny lotus buds like nervous thimbles. You might catch a glance of the pharaoh, astride his war chariot, decked out in turquoise and gold, looking like a man who single-handedly invented excessive bling. He's here to reaffirm his divine mandate, ensuring the cosmos doesn't tilt sideways and swallow the world. You imagine poor Set sulking in the desert, cursing every glint of lapis lazuli. By late morning, the procession disbands and the city resumes its mechanical bustle, though everything feels slightly off since you just watched your god's avatar sail by. You duck into a marketplace alley to avoid the crush of tourists, pilgrims, snapping votive tokens like ancestors on TikTok. Stall keepers hawk their wares, miniature statues of Thoth shaped like ibis-headed quills, pottery inscribed with papyrus scroll excerpts, and perfumed cones that drip scent over your brow like an early form of aromatherapy. You pick up a small alabaster vessel and sniff. It smells like a cross between fresh dough and old death masks, oddly comforting. Next on the agenda is a commissioned mural in your home's vestibule. You hired a painter who claims he once trained under the same master who decorated the great hypostyle hall. He arrives, palette in hand, to outline a scene of your daily life, plowing fields before dawn, offering libations at every shrine, brewing beer in the evenings. You nervously ask, "Can you tone down the part where I accidentally offended Nephthys by forgetting her altar on Tuesday?" He laughs, brushes a smudge of ochre on your shoulder, and replies, "In 500 years, they'll laugh too." He mixes pigments of malachite green and red ochre, whispering, "Let's give them a story worth telling." While he works, you sneak away to the papyrus library, where scrolls lie in dim alcoves like ancient gossip columns. You find the Book of the Dead scroll assigned to your lineage and peek at the spells intended to guide you through the Duat, the underworld labyrinth. You're startled to see your name spelled correctly, no unexpected glyphs this time, and realize that your family has been updating the scroll for generations. You carefully trace the hieroglyph for truth and wonder if your heart will pass the weighing of scales, or if you'll end up as a cautionary footnote in a sepulcher. Hungry, you make your way to a stew shop run by Messeret, a widowed cook whose broth is rumored to cure leprosy, or at least distract you from it. She ladles out lentils and dates simmered in spiced broth, and you gulp it down, flames of cumin dancing on your tongue. You ask for extra bread shaped like the Ankh, because why not invite the concept of life back into your stomach? Messeret smiles, revealing a single gold tooth, and whispers, "Eat quickly, Sekhmet might get jealous if you savor it too long." By midday, it's time for the Great Sed Festival rehearsal at the palace grounds. This event marks the pharaoh's rejuvenation. Think cosmic Botox for the divine ruler. He's supposed to run a short lap around the courtyard, demonstrating he's still spry enough to rule. Court officials fuss over his sandals, ensuring each gold inlay is perfectly aligned. Ambitious chamberlains argue over who will carry his staff, and a trio of harpists tunes their instruments to serenade the entire spectacle. You perch on a bench like a critic at a theater, munching on figs and whispering, "I bet he trips." And of course, he nearly does. His heel catches on a loose reed mat, but he recovers with a dignified slide and a triumphant grin. The crowd erupts, and you can practically hear Set grumbling a mile away. As afternoon's heat peaks, you seek refuge in the Temple of Seshat, the sacred library where offerings of ink and fresh papyrus are laid out like communion wafers. Priest scribes demonstrate their art, painting hieroglyphs with brushes made from the hair of young gazelles, mixing ink from soot and gum, and inscribing records of births, marriages, and taxes owed. You stand in awe as one scribe completes a minute drawing of a scarab, a perfect gleaming symbol of rebirth and daily renewal. You scribble a quick note to yourself, "Teach my kids this, even though you'll probably forget by supper time." Late afternoon brings a more sinister hue, the harvesting of the eternal incense. Workers enter the fields of frankincense trees outside the city, cut deep slashes in the bark, and collect resin that oozes like amber tears. This sticky substance, once burned in temples, released clouds of sweet smoke that mortals believed carried their prayers directly to the gods. You find the aroma intoxicating and wonder whether the gods felt tipsy on such offerings, or judged you for how often you skipped the Sunday temple burn. Returning home, you discover your mural finished, a vibrant scene of yourself bowing before Osiris, offering a loaf and raising a cup of beer. You inspect every detail and notice the painter snuck in a tiny scarab rolling a ball of dung, an inside joke about life's messy cycles. You clap your hands, unsettled by how accurately it captures your daily cringe-worthy mortifications. Evening approaches, and the city drifts into a muted hush, pierced only by the distant clang of temple bells. You prepare your nightly offering, a fish from the Nile, an onion, a handful of dates, and 2 jars of beer. You lay them on a low altar in your courtyard and recite the standard petition. May these gifts please Ra, nourish Osiris, and amuse Bastet. Each god gets a share because you'd rather spread your bribes thin than accidentally starve one out. As night fully descends, you listen to the choir of crickets and cicadas, imagining them as a celestial orchestra. A neighbor's torchlight flickers on the opposite wall, and you think of the cycle repeating. Tomorrow you'll wake at dawn, bake a loaf, whisper spells, juggle offerings, and attempt to curry divine favor without triggering a cosmic tantrum. Survival in this world isn't measured by wealth or power, but by how many gods you manage to keep content before breakfast. In this third act of our mythic odyssey, you've lived a day as an Egyptian peasant, with sweat-soaked tunics, hearth-baked breads, pigment-stained fingertips, and a prayer whispered for every gust of desert wind. You've marched in festivals, negotiated with crocodile gods, thwarted haircut-related curses, and admired murals depicting your own embarrassing blunders. Through it all, the gods loom large, ever hungry for tokens of devotion, never overlooking a stray hair or a missed libation. Part 4 looms on the horizon. We'll descend into the underworld's winding corridors, witness the weighing of hearts under Anubis's gaze, and pass through the 12 gates of Osiris's realm, each guarded by a monster hungrier than the last. Brace yourself for trials of truth, tests of courage, and a finale that reveals whether our hapless hero wins eternal life or becomes fodder for Amit's midnight snack. Until then, keep your offerings close, your tongue primed with spells, and your sandals sturdy, because the journey through Egypt's afterlife will make surviving its daylight rituals look like a picnic. As you step beyond the threshold of life, the stifling heat of Egypt's midday sun is replaced by a chilling breeze that carries the whispers of those who never made it this far. The air inside the Duat, the underworld's labyrinthine expanse, is thick with the scent of soaked papyrus and brimstone, as if the very walls perspire antiquity's most stubborn secrets. Your reed sandals, optimistically reserved for temple visits, now squish through mud that clings like a persistent shadow. Ahead, a flicker of torchlight reveals Anubis, jackal-headed embalmer extraordinaire, standing beside a scale crafted from the gleaming bones of long-forgotten priests. He grunts an instruction: present your heart. With trembling hands, you place your beating heart onto the golden pan. Across from you, a feather, the emblem of Ma'at's cosmic balance, rests on its counterpart. The weight of your soul, measured against truth itself, teeters in a moment more tense than a pharaoh deciding which god to offend next. Would your daily omissions, skipping that last beer offering to Sekhmet, neglecting Tawaret's dung tokens, tip the scales? Sweat beads at your temples mingling with the mud beneath your nails. A hush falls as Anubis begins to lower his hand. But wait, Thoth, ibis-headed scribe and underworld witness, swoops in with a papyrus scroll listing every time you drunkenly babbled prayers to Hathor, sneakily snuck extra fish offerings to Sobek, or accidentally called Bastet bastard mid-liturgy. He waves it like a divine cease and desist, forcing Anubis to pause. Hold on, Thoth intones in a voice that echoes like wind through sandstone pillars. We must account for mercy. You glance at your heart, still beating bravely, and then at the feather, which quivers as if uncertain of victory. Time stretches. Somewhere in the darkness, a chorus of wailing spirits drums a desperate cadence. You can almost feel Amit, the devourer, part lion, part hippopotamus, part crocodile, licking her chops, ready to snatch your soul as a post-judgment snack if you lose. You clutch a tiny scarab amulet at your throat, the symbol of Khepri who rolls the sun anew each dawn, praying it might work as a loophole. Did you remember to reshape your moral fiber as often as you reshaped clay jars for Khnum? Only the gods know. Miraculously, Anubis's hand stops descending. The scales rest perfectly level. A crack of torchlight glows in his eyes as he nods solemnly. You pass, he declares, and a collective exhale ripples through the corridor. Thoth scratches a note. Heart found acceptable with minor lint. You're ushered onward by two spectral attendants carrying torches whose flames burn with the colors of lapis lazuli and gold. They guide you past ominous gates guarded by snarling deities, each demanding the secret name of an ancestor you can barely recall. You stumble through incantations, mispronouncing a syllable or two, but somehow placate them with improvised compliments about their fearsome necklaces. Beyond the gates lies the Hall of 12 Tribulations, where each door tests an aspect of your earthly life. The first door creaks open to reveal your childhood home, complete with your mother chastising you for spilling beer on her clean papyrus. Except here, every drop solidifies into sharp papyrus shards underfoot. You dodge them gingerly, the memory stinging more than any paper cut could. Door 2 confronts you with every insult you ever hurled at a neighbor's haircut, replaying them in the voices of scorpion demons. You groan, beg forgiveness, and even compose an apology poem on the spot, an exercise more humiliating than any public shaming back in Thebes. The third trial is a banquet of illusions. Bowls of lentil stew cooling in gilded platters, jars of beer swirling with enticing foam, and platters of miniature agricultural tools tempting you to partake. But one sip or bite and you'll be trapped in an endless loop of greedy consumption, like a locust swarm devouring your soul. You grit your teeth, recall Messeret's warning that Sekhmet gets jealous of overindulgence, and resist. Hunger gnaws, but resolve holds. You march on to door 4, where hordes of bureaucratic ghost scribes demand new forms for each offering you missed in life. You present your prayers scribbled hastily on ostraca in the market. Thankfully, you still had a few scraps, and the scribes grudgingly file them under better late than never. By the time you reach door 6, fatigue has set in. Your reed sandals have sloughed half their reeds, and your torch flickers uncertainly. The trial here pits you against Anuket, Lady of the Nile cataracts, who flings torrents of spectral water hoping to drown you. You recall your morning offering to her, a single reed flower plucked with reverence. You lift the flower pleadingly, and the torrents part, forming a passage. A small triumph, sweet as tasting beer after a long fast. Door 9 gives you the greatest scare. It opens onto a desert of shifting sands where Set himself sneers from atop a dune, hurling sandstorms designed to flay your mind. You stumble blind, yet a stray prayer to Geb, spoken out loud despite the wind's roar, draws an invisible hand that steadies you. Set's storm falters, he curses, and you escape, mud-caked and victorious. The guards at door 10 offer you ointments of frankincense and myrrh. You slather them on, the aroma igniting memories of temple incense, bolstering your spirit for the final challenges. At last, you arrive at the Chamber of Rebirth. Its vaulted ceiling glitters with constellations mapped in reflective gold leaf, evoking the nighttime sky over Kemet. In the center stands Osiris upon his dais, clad in pristine linen and crowned with the Atef. He gestures to a small bier, upon which rests a papyrus roll, inscribed with your name alongside his own. Willing acolytes beckon you forward, scissors held to sever your earthly ties. A frown flickers across Osiris's lips, as if the patchwork king senses both pride and exasperation at another mortal reaching this point. You steel yourself, recalling Isis's magical prowess resurrecting Osiris from shattered pieces. You cling to her example. Even in pieces, hope endures. You step onto the bier and allow the sacred scissors to slice the invisible cords that bind you to mortality. A rush of wind lifts you, your form wavers like a reed in a breeze. The glow of eternal life, cool, serene, and bafflingly quiet, surrounds you. Pain, fear, and ritual all dissolve in a breath that lasts an eternity. When you open your eyes, you find yourself standing before Ra's morning barge. Yet this dawn is unlike any you've known on Earth. The air is crystalline. The drumbeats of cosmic creation resonate through your bones. Osiris nods at you, eyes reflecting the promise of judgment served and destiny fulfilled. "Walk with me," he says, voice resonating like distant bells. Together, you board the boat, gliding through waters of starlight and flame toward a horizon beyond human comprehension. As you drift, you realize the irony. Surviving Egypt's daylight rituals, baking bread in the shape of hoes, bribing crocodile gods, reciting prayers for every sneeze, was child's play compared to this final voyage. Here, no offerings can tip the balance, no bribes can sway the cosmic order. Only the sum of your life's absurdities, missteps, and earnest prayers has guided you to this moment. You clasp your scarab amulet one last time, and it dissolves into motes of golden light, liberated from your mortal coil. The journey through death's gauntlet is over. The path ahead is woven with the threads of eternity. Ra lights the way, Osiris guards your passage, and Thoth records your legacy in the annals of the Duat. You are no longer simply a survivor of ancient Egypt's divine bureaucracy. You are part of it, woven into the tapestry of myth, alongside gods and monsters alike. And so ends our saga of survival, satire, and soul weighing in the land of the Nile. From scorching sands to the underworld's icy breath, you've bribed, baked, battled, and beseeched your way through the most absurd pantheon history ever concocted. May your own offerings, be they loaves of bread, jars of beer, or sarcastic prayers uttered at midnight, ever find favor in the hearts of gods, lest you find yourself another cautionary carving on temple walls. Farewell, mortal. May your next dawn be brighter than Ra's fiercest sunrise, and your next breath freer than Osiris's eternal exhale. Ever wondered what happens when you shuffle off this mortal coil into a world ruled by jackal-headed morticians, crocodile gods with attitude problems, and paperwork that makes the DMV look efficient? Buckle up, because today we're cracking open ancient Egypt's afterlife, where death was only the beginning of your nightmare with benefits. Welcome to the afterlife ancient Egyptian style, where your resume isn't judged by job titles or skills, but by the weight of your heart on a divine scale. Surviving real life in Egypt required sandals, sunblock, and nightly bribes. Surviving death required a resume so spotless you'd shame a LinkedIn recruiter. So slap on some unguent, straighten your linen shroud, and let's cruise down the Nile of the dead. First stop, the Duat. Think of it as the world's most exclusive escape room, designed by chaos god Set on his worst day. This underworld sprawled beneath the earth in a labyrinth of dark tunnels, star-spangled ceilings, and doors more secure than any modern vault. No one wandered in accidentally, and if you found yourself there, congratulations. You officially joined the cosmic bureaucracy. Meet your welcome committee. Leading the procession is Anubis, jackal head gleaming under torchlight, draped in linen so pristine it makes hospital gowns jealous. His job? Embalming the newly dead, guiding them to the Hall of Two Truths, and scowling at anyone who showed up without proper burial rites. If you didn't shell out for a decent mummification, Anubis would pretend not to notice your rotting bits, until it was too late. By your side traipses Thoth, the long-necked ibis scholar, furiously scribbling down every misstep you made in life. Missed a festival? Forgot to bake a loaf shaped like a hoe for Geb? Call it a red flag, because this guy records it all. He's the cosmic auditor making sure no heartfelt apology slip goes unlogged. Your first trial, the weighing of the heart. Picture a celestial courtroom where Osiris, the patched-together king of the dead, sits atop his throne, judge's wig optional. Anubis places your heart, which miraculously survived packaging, on one side of a scale. On the other sits a single feather, the symbol of Ma'at, goddess of truth and balance. Too heavy with guilt, envy, or unpaid interest on that barley loan? Your ticker sinks. The grand devourer Ammit, part lion, hippo, and croc, eats you like a shameful midnight snack. Congratulations, you're extinct. But if your heart balances perfectly with the feather, you pass. The gates swing open and Osiris smirks. Not bad for a mortal. Come on in. The relief is so intense your soul momentarily forgets about the next 11 doors ahead. Door number 1, Hall of 12 Tribulations. The first chamber reenacts your worst childhood memory. Perhaps that time you spilled beer on your mother's papyrus scroll. Now you navigate shards of paper that slice your souls like cosmic paper cuts. Memorability rating 10 out of 10, comfort rating 0. Next door chimes open to reveal a room of mirrors reflecting every insult you ever hurled at a neighbor's haircut. The voices of scorpion demons hurl your own words back at you in grotesque echoes. You grovel, recite impromptu apologies, and beg for mercy. It's the original burn book come alive. Trial 3, The Banquet of Temptation. Platters groan under the weight of steamy lentil stew, jars of frothy beer, and miniature hoes carved from bread. Tempting? Absolutely. One bite and you're trapped in an infinite loop of gluttony, like a locust swarm at an all-you-can-eat festival. You summon your willpower, recall Meseret's warning about Sekhmet's jealousy, and resist. Hunger pangs feel like a plague, but you soldier on. Door 4, the bureaucrat's lair. Ghost scribes in translucent robes thrust ostraca at you like speed mail. Each slip demands ritual details for every offering you neglected in life. You feverishly fill them out, date, deity, type of offering, and slide them back. The scribes file them away with bored sighs and promise they'll process your paperwork, sometime before eternal oblivion. By now, your reed sandals are shredded, and your torch sputters. Door 6 hurls you into a torrent conjured by Anuket, goddess of the Nile's cataracts. She's less interested in drowning you than testing your reverence. You clutch the reed flower you offered at dawn, and the furious waters part. Houdini would be proud. Dr. 9 pits you against a sandstorm summoned by Set himself. You stumble blind, shouting prayers to Geb, god of the earth, reminding him of your careful hoe-shaped breads. An unseen hand steadies you. Set huffs, and the storm dissolves. Victory, but also exhaustion. Doors 10 and 11 treat you to ambrosial ointments of frankincense and myrrh. Dawn-bright pellets that revive your senses. You breathe deep, imagining the temple incense you used to complain about in life. Regret tastes like sandalwood. Finally, the chamber of rebirth. Glistening constellations crown the ceiling. Osiris stands by a papyrus bier etched with your name next to his. The sacred scissors gleam. You recall Isis's patchwork resurrection of Osiris. If she could piece him together, maybe you deserve a second shot. You step onto the bier, scissors severing your mortal chains. A wind lifts you. Your form flickers between reed mat and radiant spirit. Suddenly, dawn light glows through a celestial portal. Ra's solar barge awaits. You board, heart light as a feather, soul cleansed of cosmic lint. Osiris nods. Thoth jots a final note, exemplar of proper ritual etiquette. You glide through waters swirling gold and starlight, knowing that survival in the afterlife surpasses any daily drudgery you endured on Earth. Congratulations, you've navigated ancient Egypt's death gauntlet and emerged featherlight. But don't pack away your spells just yet. This is only part 1 of our descent into the afterlife's delights and horrors. Next up, the surreal courts of Osiris, the cocktail of psychopomps, and why you should never ever skip a single festival offering. Stick around because eternity is a long time to wait for the sequel. As you step off Ra's gilded barge, still reeling from that featherlight finale, you find there's no time to sip celestial ambrosia or swap victory dances with your fellow graduates of the Duat. Welcome to part 2, the courts, councils, and cosmic commutes of the afterlife, where divine paperwork meets interdimensional coffee clatches. Strap in, the fun's only half over. First order of post-rebirth business, registering at the Divine Bureau of Eternal Records, better known as the Hall of Judgment 2. Yes, they actually ran out of Roman numerals. Here, 4 psychopomps, Anubis's less punctual cousins, usher you through a labyrinth of office cubicles carved from black basalt. Each cubicle holds a scarab-shaped filing cabinet stuffed with ostraca, papyrus scrolls, and those cursed clay cones stamped with priestly names. A harried clerk with a jackal snout peers at you over golden spectacles and demands your afterlife identification scroll. You're handed one, complete with your new title, Light-Hearted Wanderer, and a barcode that suspiciously resembles a line of hieroglyphs. With ID scroll clutched, you shuffle down corridors echoing with endless phantom memos titled Mandatory Felucca Maintenance Logs and Annual Crocodile Census Reports. Every now and then, a ghostly mime performs an interpretive dance illustrating how to fill out a petition form for more incense. If you skip these OSHA violations, occupational spirit health assessments, you risk a visit from Khonsu Shuffle, the underworld's HR representative who enforces compliance by conjuring nightmares of flaming beetles crawling in your ears. Next, you reach the Regional Court of Chem, the sub-bureau of Neighborhood Watch, where petty disputes of the afterlife get adjudicated. You slide into benches carved from obsidian, flanked by the litigants, a pair of quarrelsome sisters who insist one stole the other's ghost butterfly, and a mummy complaining that her tomb decoration wasn't returned after a festival loan. Presiding Judge Nehebkau, the snake god of protection and protracted proceedings, uncoils atop his dais and demands opening statements. You watch in awe as he jots notes with a fang-shaped stylus, occasionally flicking a tongue to correct spelling errors on submitted parchments. Court lasts until dusk, if it ever ends. Fortunately, you're only a witness, so you slip out mid-hearing, humming the tune the clerk taught you. Please proceed to the third wing, turn left at the weeping statues, and avoid Pharaoh's ghost unless you have an invitation. You spot a sign for the Afterlife cafeteria, boldly proclaiming free loaves of eternity while supplies last. Tempting, but you remember that consuming any bread here means signing up for the Loaves Reconciliation Committee, which meets at 3472 BCE. You resist. Instead, you head to the Celestial Transit Hub, a vast colonnade where sacred boats arrive hourly to shuttle souls between districts. Each boat is color-coded by deity: green for Osiris, red for Sekhmet, pastel for Bastet's lounge circuit. You swipe your Afterlife ID on a reed-edged reader, then step aboard the Osiris Express. Here, you discover that even in death, there's a crowd, and small talk is unavoidable. Your seatmate, a mummy from Cairo's Old Town, complains about her budget cuts. I used to have 3 canopic jars, now I'm down to 2. They said it was a tidy up, but my intestines feel neglected. You nod sympathetically, mentally adding canopic advocacy to your to-do list. The boat glides through waters that shimmer with starlight and fallen temple dust. Along the banks, ghostly fields of papyrus sway in an eternal breeze, inhabited by spirits offering you unsolicited career advice. Ever considered becoming a Nile consultant? I hear the lioness circuits need more event planners. You smile, politely gripping the armrest as a hollow projection of Thoth floats by, reminding everyone to attend the morning scribe meetup at Gate 6. Disembarking at Osiris's domain, you find yourself in Rose Chamber Boulevard. Walls are adorned with murals depicting triumphant scenes of souls rowing alongside Ra, battling Apep, and dancing with Sekhmet-headed backup dancers. You pause to admire a tableau showing a particularly dramatic encounter with a stampede of cosmic hippos. Legend says whoever adds Hippo Wrangler to their resume here skyrockets their afterlife favor rating by at least 2 scarabs. Tempting, but you have bigger fish, literally, on your to-do list. Your next stop is the Grand Plaza of Offerings, where each soul stakes out a stone niche to leave tribute goods for the gods. You claim niche 5B, smack dab between a mountain of lotus blossoms and a precarious stack of alabaster bowls. You unload a selection of symbolic bribes: a python skin notebook for Thoth's insatiable scribbles, a golden onion for Khnum's fertility favors, and a papyrus with your own doodles for Bess's amusement. Then you bow, knock thrice, and whisper, "May these gifts lighten my steps and fatten my favor." Nearby, your neighbor left a life-size statue of themselves in a heroic pose. Classic early ad deadline scramble. As twilight falls, the plaza transforms into a social hotspot. Jinn-like musicians summon chords on lyres strung with silver threads, while dancers shaped like ibis and lioness heads twirl around glowing braziers. You drift to a corner and bump into your old festival buddy, the pharaoh's ritual harpist, now freelancing as a toastmaster. He raises an obsidian chalice filled with nectar of the gods and hollers, "To surviving your heart weighing without being eaten by a half-crocodile." You clink glasses, half expecting to taste ambrosia, but instead sipping a brew that tastes suspiciously like watered-down beer. Mid-evening brings the highlight, the Council of Thousand Names. This clandestine gathering convenes beneath a dome of mirrored obsidian, where deities and souls debate theological minutiae like, does Anubis prefer linen or papyrus wrappings? And should the Eye of Horus appear on post-mortem identity badges? You eavesdrop as Set argues passionately that thunderstorms need more flair in afterlife weather reports, while Bastet purrs about catnip distribution quotas. The chatter hums like 1,000 cicadas, punctuated by the occasional hiss of disagreement. Ever the opportunist, you slip into the crowd and scribble down notes for your own petition. More cat-style lounges for relaxation, mandatory festival calendars synced with mortal TikTok trends, and a weekly newsletter summarizing Underworld. Policy changes in plain hieroglyphs. You pass the notes to a passing ibis courier, who promises to forward them to the appropriate jar. Council adjourns with the blast of a conch trumpet, and a spectral usher directs you to the Twilight Gardens. Aishisuma Otsuru, a network of courtyards where souls mingle under the watchful eyes of Khonsu, god of the moon and time. Here, you find benches of polished obsidian carved in the shape of lotus petals in cups of chilled wine that sparkle with stardust. Amid the soft glow, two ghostly attendants stage a comedic reenactment of the weighing of the heart, with inflatable feathers and helpful subtitles. You laugh so hard your ribs ache, an unfamiliar but welcome sensation, given how much solemnity death typically commands. You settle in for an evening lecture by Seshat, goddess of writing and measurement, who presides over the Afterlife Accreditation Symposium. In a lecture hall carved into the base of an obelisk, she unveils new metrics for evaluating soul, performance, enthusiasm in ritual recital, accuracy of papyrus recycling, and level of sarcasm maintained under divine scrutiny. You make a note to aim for at least a B+ in sarcasm. It seems like your best skill. After the lecture, you amble outside to catch the celestial fireworks, pulses of light that mimic the eruption of the primordial lotus, orchestrated by Khepri himself. The sky blooms in gold and teal. Every burst echoes through the plazas like distant sistrum rattles. Souls gasp, clap, and occasionally mutter about how Rameses II probably had better budget management. You grin, remembering that even gods have to justify their expense reports. As the festivities wind down, an invitation arrives, a private tour of the Phoenix Nest, where rebirth chambers prep souls for reincarnation or higher ascension. You join a small group led by a doe-eyed priestess who offers you a choice of Letha lavender soak for memory erasure or Nile mint infusion for spiritual clarity. You opt for the infusion, curious to see if it sharpens your insight or just gives you minty fresh dialogue with Ra. Inside the nest, you lie on a bed of cushioned lotus petals while the priestess pours scented water over you. Steam rises, carrying the scent of spring's first flood, and your mind drifts through scenes of your life. The markets, the festivals, the papyrus-choked bureaucracies, now all refracted through scented mist. You feel your consciousness expand as if polishing the tarnish off an ancient mirror. A hush falls. For a moment, you glimpse the cosmic tapestry on which your soul's thread is woven. Suddenly, a gentle voice whispers, "Prepare to ascend." You open your eyes to find yourself back in the Twilight Gardens, refreshed, strangely light, and with a faint aftertaste of mint. A small lotus blossom rests in your palm, a token of your transition. The priestess smiles. Your path continues. Choose your next station. You glance at signs pointing toward Reincarnation Gate, Stellar Concourse, and Pharaoh's VIP Lounge, strictly invitation only. With a grin, you step toward the Stellar Concourse, eager to see if the stars offer better visas than mortal Egypt ever did. And with that, Part 2 closes, a whirlwind tour through afterlife bureaucracy, socializing under obsidian fireworks and mint-scented revelations. Next up, cosmic job fairs, divine speed dating with moon gods, and why you should avoid getting on Sobek's bad side when networking. Eternity waits. So polish your ID scroll and brace your sense of humor. The afterlife's just beginning. As you straighten your tunic and adjust the strap of your celestial satchel, still humming from the Twilight Garden's minty epiphany, you realize Part 3 won't be about mellow strolls through obsidian courtyards or polite chats with sandal polishing custodians. No, here we plunge headfirst into the afterlife's hustle. Job fairs that make mortal employment expos look like kids' lemonade stands, speed dating with deities whose headgear could double as weapons, and networking events where your biggest asset is how many festival offerings you remembered in life. Ready your wits, tighten your sandals, and let's get absurd. First on the docket, the Cosmic Career Coliseum, a grand arena carved from a single block of black granite, so vast it could hold 1,000 lost resumes, and that's just the ones shoved under the bleachers. Banners flutter overhead, each emblazoned with a different department: River Management Corps, Sobek Division, Underworld Logistics and Delivery, Anubis Express, Temple Event Planning, Hathor's Hospitality, and Stellar Cartography, Thoth's, Topographers. You pick up a pamphlet printed on eternal papyrus, titled Positions Available, Eternal Scribe, Nile Constellation Consultant, Warp Gate Detailer, and Junior Soul Schema Architect. Beneath it, in tiny glyphs, a footnote warns, candidates lacking proper offerings will be returned to the waiting area. Charming. You inch forward in line behind a disgruntled mummy clutching 3 half-empty canopic jars. She's here for Junior Soul Schema Architect, because apparently Ankh Corp over at the Phoenix Nest is expanding. You overhear her muttering, "They promise more organizational charts, less soul tweaking." You offer a sympathetic nod, and she snaps. Watch out for the interview with Sekhmet's recruitment panel. They're all about ferocity metrics. You gulp, clutching your scarab amulet like it's a winning lottery ticket. When your name is called, you step onto the central dais. Across from you sits a panel, a lioness-headed goddess with jeweled armor, Sekhmet herself, an ibis-headed bureaucrat rubbing his chin, Thoth, and a grinning crocodile wearing a sash of papyrus streamers, Sobek. Sekhmet's claws tap the table impatiently as she booms. Why should we hire you for the Afterlife Hydration Initiative? You blink. Hydration? She clarifies. We need someone to monitor the celestial springs. Make sure no ghostly traveler suffers from renal distress. You nod vigorously. My experience with brewing beer and managing water offerings in life gives me a unique perspective on fluid balance. Thoth hums appreciatively. Sobek flips a scale-shaped token your way, indicating provisional acceptance, assuming you pass the stamina trials later. Next stop, the speed dating the Divine Lounge, a networking extravaganza that rivals any mortal Tinder meetup, except your potential matches have animal heads, legendary tempers, and a tendency to demand ritual tribute on the spot. You enter a circular atrium where golden couches line the walls, each occupied by a patron deity eager to expand their circle of influence. A floating scoreboard cycles through timers. 3 minutes remaining above Nut's star-cloaked seat, 2 minutes remaining beside Bess's animated footstool, and 1 minute remaining next to Khnum, who's sculpting a human figurine on his pottery. Wheel as you approach. Your first match is Nut, the sky goddess draped across the vaulted ceiling, embodied here as a graceful woman perched on a cloud-shaped cushion. She greets you with a nod so subtle you almost miss it. Tell me about yourself, she purrs, voice echoing like wind through distant peaks. You stammer out your life story, farming loaves in the shape of hoes, bribing crocodile gods, baking onions for Geb, appeasing Sekhmet with honeyed fowl. Basically the resume equivalent of, I've survived every divine tantrum known to humanity. Nut smiles, her eyes reflecting constellations you can't quite name. She jots a note on a floating scroll, adaptable, feast-proof, might enjoy eclipse co-hosting. 3 minutes up, bell chimes. You flap your arms awkwardly, nod politely, and clear the couch for the next hopeful. Best time next. The squat, leonine demon protector lounges on what appears to be a giant pillow of padded papyrus. He grins, revealing 2 rows of gleaming teeth. So, mortal, he rumbles, you said you made many agricultural tools from dough in life. How's that relevant to me? You explain that your meticulous craftsmanship and attention to symbolic detail mean you could help him customize protective charms, perhaps tiny loaves engraved with his visage or onion-shaped amulets. Bess chuckles, bouncing on his cushion. I like where your head's at. Send me some samples. He hands you a sealed clay token to deposit in the grand plaza of offerings later. Another match, another token. Your satchel grows heavier with divine demands. Khnum's turn. He squints at your resume, then asks, can you provide on-the-spot molding of a soul's essence into clay? You sweat. Well, I did shape a few jars for Mezeret's stew shop, but it's not quite soul level. He nods solemnly and invites you to a trial next week at the Potter's Archway. Bring your own clay and a hymn to say shot. It's a tacit interview. You exit, eyes watering under the weight of clay requests and looming deadlines. Between matches, you wander to the refreshment pavilion, where ghostly attendants ladle nectar of refined regret, a beverage so bittersweet it leaves your tongue tingling, and ichor-infused dates that glow with lunar luminescence. You pop a date and immediately regret it. Now you vaguely smell of moon mildew, which might be off-putting in future divine encounters. You stroll through a souvenir booth selling, I met the gods and all I got was this lousy amulet, T-shapes carved from basalt. You resist temptation. Your satchel can't handle more weight. Once the lounge doors close, you proceed to the Afterlife Apprenticeship Alley, where new souls learn specialized trades under divine mentors. Apprentices line up at booths labeled Underworld Courier Service, Osiris's Memorial Restoration, Crocodile Etiquette Instruction, and Humming Hymn Hackathons. You sign up for Underworld Courier Service, reasoning that roaming the Duat's corridors delivering memos might be more stable than juggling festival logistics. A spectral recruiter hands you a kit, miniature scrolls, ink sticks, and a reed quill blessed by Thoth. "Report to Gate 4 at dawn," she intones before fading into the gloom. That night, you drift through the afterlife's equivalent of late-shift coworker revelry. A bonfire lit with frankincense resin, accompanied by sand-drift karaoke where ghosts belt ancient hymns slightly off-key. You share a flask of afterlife ale with a former vizier, complaining that pharaohs never acknowledged his brilliance. You sympathize. Nothing stings like unrecognized service, mortal or immortal. Spirits dance around you, casting long, swaying shadows that remind you of temple columns in the living world. For a moment, you almost forget you're dead, caught between laughter and the realization that eternity is a very long party. Morning dawns unexpectedly crisp, the sun's rays filtered through a translucent vault of quartz that brightens the Duat's corridors. You gather your satchel and head to Gate 4 for your courier apprenticeship orientation. A stern-looking spectral captain hands you a ledger and a map etched with glowing roots. Deliver these memos to the Tribunal of Souls at Chamber 12, then fetch fresh ibis feather pens from the scribe annex. You nod, determined to prove your competence, lest you end up swept away by rogue sandstorms or lost in the desert of discarded offerings. On your first delivery, you navigate a maze of corridors, where walls shift like the sands above ground. At each junction, a hovering sign offers choices: left to the tapestry of wrongful accusations, right to the pit of unfulfilled libations, straight to the waiting room for recusals. You grit your teeth, recall your orientation pep talk, trust the map, not the echoes, and plunge forward. The air hums with distant chants, and occasionally you glimpse spectral figures reciting oaths in dead languages. At last you find Chamber 12, a domed amphitheater where souls await judgment for bureaucratic infractions, missed deadlines, incomplete petitions, shabby tomb decorations. You slip through the crowd, deposit your memos at the feet of a weeping scribe, and slip away before a chariot of scales rolls through. Next, you detour to the scribe annex for those reed pens. Inside, dozens of will-o'-the-wisp librarians sort scrolls by luminescence and scent. You politely stand in line behind a nervous soul trying to return a cursed scroll. Apparently, the spells inside made their head explode. It's fine, they're fine. When it's your turn, you exchange the token from Bess for a bundle of fresh pens and a warning: keep these dry. Moisture attracts judgment. You tuck them safely in your satchel, along with the lingering anxiety that you might be carrying too many divine favors. By mid-afternoon, you return to the Cosmic Career Coliseum for results. Did you secure a spot in the Afterlife Hydration Initiative? A gilded messenger pigeon swoops down, dropping a scroll sealed with Sekhmet's claw print. With trembling fingers, you break it open. Congratulations. Report to the Celestial Springs by the next lunar cycle. Uniform provided. Linen tunic with embroidered crocodile motif. You pump your fist in triumph, an actual victory in the afterlife's endless hustle. Emboldened, you slip into the grand plaza of offerings one last time before closing. You deposit the python skin notebook at Thoth's enclave, slide the golden onion to Khnum's shrine, and tuck your doodled papyrus under Bess's jurisdiction. Then you bow to Bastat's statue, whispering apologies for any off-color jokes you made in life. As you stand, a soft breeze stirs the offerings, as if the gods themselves murmur approval. Or maybe it's just the mechanical whisper of wind through carved hieroglyphs. As dusk falls, you pause at the edge of the plaza, gazing at the endless horizon of torchlit paths leading deeper into the Duat. Ahead lie the stellar concourse, the pharaoh's VIP lounge, and realms so obscure that not even the scribes dare map them. You pat your satchel, heavier now but brimming with purpose. You've navigated job fairs, survived speed dating deities, snagged an apprenticeship, and landed an actual position. Not bad for a mortal who once feared offending a cow-eared hostess. In Part 4, we'll chart the final leg. Mastering the Afterlife Hydration Initiative, bring your own water skin, decoding celestial legalese in high Ankh court, and finally discovering whether you can retire from this eternal hustle. Or, if divine, bureaucracy is the real afterlife's greatest trap. Until then, mortals and spirits alike, may your offerings be precise, your scrolls complete, and your sandals ever ready for the next cosmic commute. As you tighten the embroidered crocodile tunic provided by Sekhmet's recruitment panel, its scales gleaming under torchlight, it hits you. The Afterlife Hydration Initiative isn't just a cushy gig handing out water skins. It's a mission-critical operation keeping spectral travelers from turning into desiccated husks. You strap on your canteen harness, fashioned from gilded reeds, and report to the celestial springs before the next lunar cycle, where 4 colossal basins brim with waters channeled straight from the primordial flood. Your supervisor, a stern ibis-headed overseer named Hikinu, greets you with a clipboard carved of onyx. First task, monitor pH levels, he declares, squinting at glowing glyphic readouts. Last month, impurities from a misfiled funeral offering nearly unleashed a plague of acidic spirits. You swallow, wondering how 1 bag of incense dust can unbalance divine water chemistry, but nod and leap into action. You wade into the shallows, scooping vials of shimmering liquid and testing them against feather-light scales enchanted by Thoth. The water hisses like a startled serpent if too acidic. Bubbles of ethereal steam rise when it's alkaline. You adjust flow valves, ancient bronze levers engraved with protective spells, until each basin hums with perfect equilibrium. It's tedious work, but every balancing act spares a soul from a soul-shriveled fate. Between quality checks, you oversee queue management at the refreshment alcove. A steady stream of apparitions, former farmers, scribes, even a disgraced vizier, line up for ration sips. You fill ornate goblets, offering polite nods as you pass each a draught of life's essence. One ghostly artisan thanks you, praising the water's clarity. Another mutters about missing the barley-flavored ales of Messeret's stew shop. You reassure them our next contract includes brew infusion trials. Their cheers echo off basalt walls, reminding you why you accepted this post. Mid-shift, Hikinu summons you to the Council of Wells, an amphitheater where department heads debate policy. Today's agenda: integration of floral essences into hydration rations. Bastet argues that lotus extract will soothe weary souls. Sobek pushes for crocodile blood infusions to boost immunity. Sekhmet demands spicy ginger for its aggressive antiseptic kick. You quietly propose a compromise. Offer optional floral sachets alongside pure water. The council hums in approval, and you bask in the rare glory of being consulted in divine policy. No sooner have you left the amphitheater than a messenger hawk swoops in, dropping an urgent missive. You're to appear before the High Ankh court to defend against a complaint filed by Nephthys' estate. Apparently, your team's water testing procedures disturb the non-corporeal lilies that grow in her morning pools. You groan, bureaucracy never sleeps, even in death, and head to the court's alabaster gates. Inside, serpentine columns wind skyward, each carved with archaic legal codes. You're ushered before a trio of judges, Nephthys' own avatar, a looming figure of shadow, a squeaky-voiced scribe passionately waving a reed quill, and a solemn elder goddess representing cosmic precedent. You present your findings, test logs, flow diagrams, and letters of support from grateful souls, hoping procedural transparency will suffice. The scribe scrutinizes each scroll, punctuating his reading with dramatic gasps. After what feels like an eternity, the shadow goddess nods and taps a dais. "Case dismissed," she intones, "but mind the lilies in future calibrations." You exhale, relief flooding you more potently than Hikinu's finest spring water. With your legal risk managed, you return to fieldwork, installing protective wards around spring outlets to guard against disruptive funeral incense. Using miniature pyramids carved from quartz, you channel protective glyphs that softly glow whenever impurities approach. It's painstaking. Each ward takes a full day of chanting and grounding. But afterward, the water flows spotless. You imagine mortal water treatment plants, then laugh at the absurdity. No chemical engineers in the Duat, just dedicated souls chanting harmonies to hold chaos at bay. Evening descends and the Duat grows still. You join your colleagues in the staff refectory, a courtyard festooned with hanging lotus lanterns. Platters of spiced fowl, sweet dates, and miniature hoe-shaped bread loaves, just like life, await. You swap tales of near-acidic outbreaks, lily disturbances, and tribunal triumphs. Anubis's courier recruits share gossip from distant chambers. Seshat's apprentices brag about newly deciphered policy scrolls. The night crackles with camaraderie, a fleeting reminder that even in eternity, companionship softens the grind. Before turning in, you embark on a personal ritual, offering a portion of your rations to the river carved into the courtyard floor. You whisper, "May these waters carry gratitude to Ra's morning barge." The surface shimmers as if acknowledging your intent, and for a moment you feel closer to that sun god who started this whole journey. Dawn arrives not with sunrise, but with the soft glow of cosmic dawn, a palette of rose and gold emanating from the horizon of endless corridors. You check your roster. Today's schedule includes a final hydration audit at the Phoenix Nest, participation in the Festival of Renewed Spirits, and a guest lecture in the Symposium of Transitional Care. At the Phoenix Nest, you inspect lotus fiber filters purifying rebirth waters. Apprentices watch as you demonstrate proper backwash techniques, releasing accumulated karmic debris into designated holding basins. They record each step reverently, vying for mastery badges from Thoth. You recall your own fumbling at the Afterlife job fair, thinking who knew brew infusion would lead here. Later, you attend the Festival of Renewed Spirits, a gala where souls showcase enhancements gleaned from their roles. Performances include a dance troupe representing the ins and outs of nasal inhalation therapy, thank Bastet, and a choir interpreting the harmonic frequencies of well-balanced spring waters. You feel a swell of pride when your hydration team receives a ceremonial wreath of papyrus reeds, lauded for sustaining the flow of hope. Your guest lecture at the Symposium of Transitional Care draws an audience of mortician guilds, festival musum, coordinators, and underworld chefs. You speak on the art and science of hydration in post-mortal environments, peppering your talk with anecdotes of nearly petrified spirits and triumphant test-scale victories. Attendees scribble notes on papyrus tablets, nodding at your practical insights, and at your sarcastic quips about never underestimating a vengeful lily. As you wrap up, Thoth himself emerges, offering a quill fashioned from your favorite ibis, feather. "For your records," he says with a wry smile. You accept, feeling the weight of recognition ripple through your spine. That evening, you retire to the Twilight Gardens once more, but this time with a new perspective. The obsidian benches feel warmer, the mint-scented fountains more familiar. The horizon's torches no longer mark endless bureaucracy, they signal purpose found in service. You clench the ibis quill, jotting a final note to yourself. Eternity may be infinite, but it's the small acts, balancing a basin, soothing a parched soul, warding lilies, that define it. You tuck the note into your satchel alongside your ID scroll, your apprenticeship ledger, and the lotus blossom from the Phoenix Nest. Tomorrow, perhaps, you'll venture toward the Stellar Concourse or take a quiet moment in the Pharaoh's VIP lounge, if you can score an invitation. But for now, you lean back and sip a measure of Afterlife ale, toasting to a journey that began with a single heartbeat on Anubis' scales and grew into a vocation sustaining multitudes. In the grand tapestry of the Duat, you are no longer a mere mortal. You are the keeper of springs, the balancer of waters, the soul who found meaning in service long after life's final breath. And as the twin moons rise, you realize this afterlife, absurd, demanding, bureaucratic, is somehow, wonderfully, home. Ever wondered why ancient Egyptians thought your neighborhood cat could double as a divine assassin, or why seeing a crocodile in the Nile might be less wildlife encounter and more religious summons? Strap in. Today we're unraveling the bizarre bestiary of Egyptian gods, where every head, tail, and hoof had cosmic significance, and left you praying you'd never meet that beast in a dark alley. Picture this. You're hauling a crate of onions to market, sun beating down like Ra's own spotlight, when you glimpse a statue of Bastet, woman's body, cat's head, looming nearby. You freeze, onions halfway to your nose, because in Egypt that feline wasn't just cute fluff. She was the goddess of home protection, fertility, and questionable nighttime parties. Offend her, and you might wake up scratched, or worse, cursed with perpetual bad hair days. But praise her, and your household earned most likely to avoid plague status. Welcome to the first tale of our animal pantheon. Bastet began life as a lioness warrior. Picture an ancient Egyptian Rambo in a fur bikini, slashing demons in half. Over millennia, she mellowed into a domestic cat diva. Temples teemed with kittens, worshippers adorned themselves in cat jewelry. Even the upper lip of a statue might curl in feline contempt if you forgot to feed your own pet cat that morning. For survival, You learned to leave a saucer of milk by the door and avoid the dreaded Bastet glare when she felt underappreciated. Cross the Nile a few miles north, and you'd meet Sobek, the crocodile god. Imagine a deity with scaly hide, jaws powerful enough to devour a cow, and zero tolerance for mild inconvenience, like your tiny fishing boat cutting too close to his breeding grounds. Fishermen bribed him with sacrifices, jars of beer, baskets of fish. Miss 1 week and you risked waking up to empty nets, or worse, teeth marks in your pelvis. Sobek's worship wasn't for the faint-hearted. It was a reminder that the line between deity and apex predator was razor thin. Then there was Anubis, the jackal-headed embalmer, sporting ears that could eavesdrop on gossip for miles. You might think jackals are just scavengers, but in Anubis's hands they became cosmic undertakers. Priests dressed as jackals in funerary rites, guiding souls through the underworld's shadowy labyrinth. For the common folk, this meant your mummified remains got the VIP treatment, or you ended up as snake lunch. When Anubis passed by, you bowed so low your nose hit the sand, because afterlife survival hinged on a proper mummification more than any health insurance plan. Not all gods lurked by the riverbank. Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe, strutted around with a beak so long it could flip papyrus pages from 50 paces. He invented writing, or at least took credit for it, so you could record every minor festival debt, tax chisel mark, and neighborly insult. His bird form symbolized transcendent thought, a reminder that even birds have better memories than your average grain merchant. Worshipping Thoth meant offering ink and papyrus, hoping your account books balanced and your gossip was recorded in the approved scrolls, rather than in the here be snakes section. Seal off the pantheon's wings, and you'd stumble upon Sekhmet, lioness of war and plague. When Ra got grumpy, he unleashed her to scorch the earth and remind mortals what happens when you slack off on temple maintenance. Imagine sipping your morning brew when the sky roils with fiery clouds and ash rumbles like a celestial tantrum. Survivors left offerings of honey and beer to appease her, because nothing says I repent like chugging a pint in a lava storm. Prophetically, Sekhmet's rage taught you to never skip a festival or forget temple dues, lest your harvest brown up like last week's papyrus. Across dusty deserts roamed Khnum, the ram-headed potter god, crafting humans on his wheel from Nile clay. In ram form, he symbolized raw fertility, brawn, and I won't hesitate to butt you off a ledge. Farmers begged him for irrigation control, because who better to shape human destiny than a cosmic craftsman with horns? Khnum's cult centered at Elephantine Island, where you'd pray while dodging sacrificial sheep and hoping he didn't get hungry for a live clay model demonstration. Over at the Temple of Hathor, you encountered a different animal motif, the cow. Hathor, goddess of love, music, and after-party antics, paraded around with bovine horns and a solar disk, as if saying, I see your sun god and raise you a nightlife scene. She gave humanity beer, yes, beer, and invited the deceased to eternal dance. Marathons. For ordinary Egyptians, participating in her festivals meant getting royally plastered alongside temple musicians, all in reverent honor of a dairy mammal. Skipping out on Hathor's rites? That's how you ended up snoring through eternity. And let's not forget Horus, the falcon-eyed sky god, who kept constant watch from his lofty perch. Royalty claimed descent from Horus, so the pharaoh's eagle-eyed gaze was literal. His loss of an eye to Set and its miraculous restoration became the Eye of Horus amulet, plastered over doorways like cosmic security systems. You wore it to ward off illness. Thieves avoided houses marked with it. Horus's falcon form taught you that one look could mean mercy or a death spear. Survival trick. Maintain a respectful distance from eye-shaped jewelry when feeling puny. Peek into lesser-known menageries and you'd meet Sobek's counterpart, Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess of childbirth. She had the head of a hippo, the legs of a lion, the back of a crocodile, and a penchant for scaring midwives. Pregnant mothers begged her for safe deliveries, often by leaving mud cones and little hippo statuettes at her shrine, hoping their births wouldn't end with family carnage. Survival of infants back then depended on appeasing a half-hoofed goddess who looked like she could swallow you whole. Then came Bennu, the heron-like phoenix precursor, rising in golden plumage from the ashes and symbolizing rebirth. In heron form, he was the cosmic sleep trainer. Mystics watched him to interpret dreams and predict floods. Seeing a heron at dawn? You'd whisper a prayer to Bennu, hoping your cropland survived the next inundation. If your homestead got submerged, at least you could brag you'd glimpsed divine reincarnation in the flesh. Even the smallest animals got divine career paths. The scarab beetle, rolling its dung ball across the sand, embodied Khepri, the morning sun personification. Dung beetles represented daily rebirth as they tumbled their treasures eastward, so you offered them handfuls of sweet dough to keep your souls turning. Forget the scarab favor and risk waking up with cosmic jet lag. Your spirit wouldn't rise on schedule, and that's a rough commute. Through this menagerie, the Egyptians crafted a world where every beast, winged or scaled, became a living hieroglyph of divine power. For survival, you memorized which animals to praise, and which to avoid unless you carried lavish offerings. A fleeting glimpse of a falcon. Offer a prayer to Horus, a hiss from a cobra. Snake charmers hustled through marketplaces to sell you protective onks. Waterfowl? You'd better leave a barley loaf at the shrine of Geb. For the priests, these animal gods weren't mere symbols. They were corporate executives in the cosmic firmament. Temples functioned like headquarters, animals functioned like logos, and daily rituals were shareholder meetings. Every citizen a stakeholder in the state religion. Missing a market day libation might trigger a divine market crash. Locust swarms, crop failures, or pestilence. The stakes were high, and the survival pain real. In the next chapter, we'll dive deeper into the absurd origins of these zoomorphic deities, how mythmakers looked at a Nile cat, a hawk, or a beetle and thought, yes, that's the face of God. We'll explore the wild stories behind each animal's shape, the bizarre ceremonies their cults spawned, and the daily customs you had to adopt, bread baking hacks, animal impersonations, and midnight bribes to live another sunrise. So sharpen your claws, fluff your feathers, and prepare for part 2. Divine ancestry, animal style, where gods and critters fuse in myths more twisted than a crocodile's intestines. As dawn's golden haze settles over the riverbank, imagine the ancient scribes huddled in damp chambers, arguing whether a jackal's beady glare or a ram's curved horns better captured the essence of divine power. This was the moment mythology caught its tail and decided, animals will run the show. Welcome to the second leg of our zoomorphic roller coaster, where gods metamorphose into beasts, and every barnyard drama carried cosmic consequence. Let's begin with those primordial prototypes, the Ogdoad of Hermopolis. 8 elemental powers took on amphibian and serpent avatars. Male frogs puffed themselves with life force, and female snakes slithered secrets of chaos. Picture a smoky temple hall where priests in frog masks croaked hymns alongside serpent-draped priestesses, all to honor the duality of existence. The frog gods symbolized potentiality, essentially the universe's blank check, while the snakes embodied the mystery lurking beneath creation. Offerings included reed bundles and fresh spawn. Survival tip: don't misidentify your reptiles, or the high priest might hiss at you all the way to the afterlife. Next, we sail north to Heliopolis, where Atum, the self-engendered sun god, first morphed into a venerable man, then into a sprawling bull. The Apis bull cult emerged because people thought, why not worship the most horned thing we see daily? An Apis calf's birth sparked national hype, coronation ceremonies, gold leaf adornments, and daily parades flaunting its black and white, smudge pattern like a living abstract painting. Farmers paused plowing to salute it. Bakers inscribed its bovine silhouette on loaves. The mere hoof print became currency in the cattle markets. Missing the bull's midday pasture blessing? Expect shriveled crops and uneasy mooless nights. Meanwhile, over in Memphis, Ta took on the mantle of the divine craftsman, initially as a humble man, later merging the traits of the bull and jackal in statuary. Why those animals? The bull's strength symbolized creative force. The jackal's scavenging turned into pragmatic resourcefulness. In his workshops, temple builders carved colossal statues under the watchful eye of Ta's hybrid icon, chanting psalm-like cornucopias of craftsmanship. May my chisels carve worlds, my plans shape reality. Skimp on a single temple pillar, and rumor had it your house bricks might crumble at the next sandstorm. Onto the western desert, where Set's tempestuous reputation blossomed into the composite Set animal, a long-snouted creature with pointy ears and forked tail, so unique it never matched any known species. Scholars today call it the Set jackal. but to Egyptians it was pure pandemonium. Storms, chaos, revenge porn incarnate. Seeing this creature's likeness carved on a temple wall was a warning sign. Don't ask me why, just know Set's watching. Farmers whispered prayers when winds picked up, hoping they wouldn't unleash Set's worst temper tantrum and blow away entire huts. Over at Elephantine Island, Khnum's ram head crowned him Master Potter, but his form also signaled virile potency. Young couples visiting his sanctuary brought clay figurines of themselves, half-baked proposals to the god for fertile unions. If a marriage stayed childless, neighbors' gossip claimed the clay figures must be warped or misfired. Survival hack: attend Khnum's morning ritual to have your figurine reshaped under chanting of "Let there be barley for bread and babes for cradles." Venturing to the delta, Wadjet, Cobra goddess of Lower Egypt, reigned as protector of pharaohs. Her iconic Urias serpent perched on royal brow, ready to strike anyone threatening the throne. Witnessing a cobra in the wild, locals didn't scoff at wildlife documentaries. They dropped to their knees, placated the serpent with milk offerings, then kept walking backward. Offend Wadjet, and your royal decree risked being swallowed before it even left the scribe's hand. Then came the duo of Nekbet and Wadjet, the vulture and the cobra, united as protectresses of Upper and Lower Egypt. On the pharaoh's crown, the vulture's outstretched wings complemented the cobra's poised hood. "I see all," they seemed to say. Vulture priests scavenged desert plateaus for remains, believing the birds carried prayers skyward with each bone-crunching peck. Skipping vulture festival days was akin to neglecting your roof, exposed to hazards from above. Let's not overlook Thoth's heron aspect. Before the ibis became iconic, scribes revered the marsh heron for its dawn chorus and impeccable posture, likening its elegance to divine intellect. Monks in papyrus groves observed heron nesting to forecast inundations. Large nests spelled high floods, small ones foretold drought. A misplaced heron nest? Temple seers blamed human error, likely a farmer forgetting the monthly barley sacrifice. What about the majestic falcon of Horus? Young Horus was sketched atop temple pylons with wings spread, deflecting Set's assaults like a celestial bouncer. Falcon lords, elite warriors, donned hawk-headed helmets, believing they inherited the god's eyesight. They served as royal bodyguards, perched on palace towers at dusk, scanning horizons for threats. Failure to spot approaching enemies? Public flogging by priests, all in the name of divine vigilance. As wild as these zoomorphs seem, the Egyptians drew a crucial line. Mortals could homage these beasts, but actual humans didn't walk around with animal heads. Legally, you risked a one-day sanctuary sentence under Animal Deification Disguise Act if caught dressed as Set without proper festival credentials. Commoners favored symbolic masks during rituals. Full transformation was strictly for statues and nightmares. By smearing feline fur paint or donning jackal-eared headdresses on feast days, ordinary folks tapped into the god's animal powers without invoking a literal curse. Neighbors gossiped about the cat lover's ball at Bastet's temple, a party so decadent animals probably petitioned for labor rights afterward. Crocodile wrestling contest for Sobek's feast? Sure, but only if you signed indemnity scrolls first. Through this bestiary, Egyptians declared, the divine is in the wild, the untamed, the creatures lurking beyond the hearth. To survive, you memorized animal associations like a modern driver studies traffic signs. See a hawk? Salute Horus. Spot a jackal? Offer bread to Anubis. Swerve a serpent. Wipe sweat and keep moving. These quick rituals saved lives more reliably than army-issued shields. And so mythology and biology entwined. Priests, peasants, and pharaohs alike, navigating a world where your nearest barnyard friend might just be a converted deity with a temper. In part 3, we'll trawl deeper into the outlandish ceremonies these zoomorphic cults spawned, from nightly cat parades to crocodile boat races, and reveal how survival in ancient Egypt meant knowing your animal gods better than your own family tree. Buckle your sandals. The safari's only gotten wilder. As the sun dips below the western horizon, casting long shadows over the Nile's rippling surface, Egypt's animal god festivals roar to life, each more absurd and survival critical than the last. Part 3 plunges us into the raucous ceremonies, bizarre competitions and midnight rites that turned humans and wildlife into locked horn partners in cosmic theater. Fasten your sandals. We're diving into the religious safari where ignorance meant missing out on divine brownie points. Or worse, waking up next to a sacrificial altar. First up, Bastets Bubastis Blowout. Once a year in the city that bore her feline name, the cat goddess threw a party that made your average house cat's 2 a.m. zoomies look tame. Tens of thousands of devotees, dressed in linen tunics dyed cat ear yellow, paraded down the Nile in sleek barges shaped like gigantic kitschy cat heads. Musicians pounded drums carved from beaten sphinx hides while dancers twirled ankle bells and mimed graceful feline prowls. Vendors hawked sticky pastries shaped like mouse carcasses, sweet dough of course, and bowls of milk infused with date wine. If you didn't show up, local gossip held, your pet cat might glare at you for a solid 7 days, or worse, scratch your shins in retribution. Survival hack: arrive early, secure a front row perch next to the sacred alabaster kitten statue, and toss it at least one sacrificial sardine. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles upstream, Sobek's Crocodile Cup Regatta electrified the marshlands. Fishermen-turned-boatmen dinghies were decked out in crocodile scales, thin leather from sacrificial offerings, and emblazoned with Sobek's snarling visage. Competitors donned foam jaws to impersonate river lizards, paddling furiously past cheering onlookers while priests peered from reed towers, chanting, "Bring forth the toothy tide." The prize? A gilded croc-tooth amulet said to guarantee immunity from belly bloat, a mild digestive affliction blamed on neglected water god offerings. Skip the race, and you risked confused Sobek devotees pelting your boat with stale fish halves. Spoiler: most survivors learned to pick up stale fish halves as a peace offering. At dusk, the hippo-heavy spectacle of Toweret's birthing bonanza took center stage. Pregnant women and their entire families congregated at riverbank shrines, each proudly brandishing small clay hippo figurines painted in pastel hues. Midwives in hippo-masked headdresses led chants promising safe delivery, while volunteer dancers stomped in water troughs to invoke the goddess's protective presence. After the ritual dance, women received symbolic placenta cakes, flat discs embossed with hippo paw prints, and ate them to internalize Toweret's safeguarding powers. Cringe factor, maximum. Reward? A noticeable drop in maternal and infant mortality rates for months thereafter, or so legend claimed. Failure to participate reportedly led to shrieking at odd hours and spontaneous nosebleeds, still better than a lawsuit for timeout on ancient parenting. As the moon rose, the Apis Bull's midnight march transformed Memphis into a bovine bacchanal. The current living Apis calf, decked in gold leaf horns and a ceremonial nose ring, was led through the city atop an ivory litter, its steps timed to a thundering drumline. Crowds knelt as high priests recited hymns extolling the bull's fertility potency. Public officials tossed handfuls of barley corn cobs before the beast, and acolytes collected its sacred urine in alabaster jars, believed to cure skin afflictions. Miss the bull's stroll, and neighbors shamed you for forgetting the pious moo, a social slight worse than being labeled untidy with laundry. Afterward, revelers quaffed bull milk smoothies, thick, chalky, and allegedly rich in divine calcium, and grumbled about how even the gods had to raise funds through urine cells. Across the desert, the Set Beast's sandstorm soiree delighted thrill seekers. Participants donned elaborate headdresses resembling the Set Jackal's uncanny snout and engaged in staged chaos, mock battles, sand-tossing contests, and role plays of cosmic treachery. The climax involved a giant sandpit duel where actors portrayed Horus and Set's epic struggle, only in slow motion, with oversized props like foam spears studded with desert thorns. Audience members lobbed ritual pebbles at the defeated Set avatar, shouting "Balance to Ma'at." A post-event warning reminded people not to carry off any actual desert thorns. Set aficionados were known to vex petty thieves with inexplicable blood blister curses. In the capital, Ta's Artisan Showcase summoned craftspeople from across Egypt to demonstrate feats of divine workmanship. Sculptors carved miniature bull-jackal hybrid figurines under a time limit. Weavers crafted cloth imprinted with dual animal motifs, and metalworkers hammered inks into jewelry, all while quoting Ta's blueprint hymns. The competition's prize was a golden chisel blessed by Ptah himself, a tool said to guarantee smooth stonework so long as its owner recited the workshop's protective incantation thrice daily. Missing a single hymn reportedly resulted in chipped frescoes and malicious temple gossips, attributing the flaws to a curse of the great craftsman. Meanwhile, the quiet marshes worshipping Thoth erupted for the ibis feather flight festival. Young acolytes strapped feathered wings to their arms, crafted from real ibis plumes, and leapt from low platforms, flapping furiously to emulate their deity's airborne grace. Real ibises congregated nearby, observed by priests to approve the human attempts. Spectators praised the most graceful flappers with garlands of papyrus stalks, while the clumsiest face plants drew sympathetic oohs and the occasional divine face slap from a passing priest with a reed rod. Successful participants received ink-filled quills to draft their own papyrus scrolls, a sacred honor in Thoth's realm. Not all ceremonies were public spectacles. In backdoor whisper networks, devotees of Khnum practiced a secret rite of the clay flesh. Participants sculpted tiny human figures from Nile mud and buried them under their doorsteps, believing the god would reshape their fertility prospects overnight. The next morning, they exhumed the figures, often cracked, half-dissolved, or crawling with insects, to interpret omens. A solid, intact figure signified forthcoming prosperity. A misshapen, maggoty one. Well, they prayed harder and baked more clay mice as compensation. Of course, Horus's falcon lords staged their own aerial pageants. Trained hawks swooped through temple courtyards carrying scrolls inscribed with praises. Falcon handlers in feathered masks directed them with secret whistles, earning praise for demonstrating Horus's piercing vision. Occasionally, a hawk refused its task, interpreted as divine displeasure, and priests immediately organized a fresh flight test, complete with appeasement incense and sacrificial barley grains scattered along the intended flight path. Then came the nocturnal obsession of the scarab, a clandestine swarm ritual honoring Khepri's daily rebirth. At midnight, initiates sat in a circle, each holding a live dung beetle in a glass jar filled with scented sand. They whispered mantras until the beetles began rolling miniature dung balls, viewed as microcosms of the sun's daily journey. Those whose beetles failed to cooperate were advised to offer more sweet dough at Khepri's shrine the next morning. Yearly beetle behavior audits ensured no soul went too long without a successful dung roll under the watchful gaze of a scarab-shaped shadow puppet show. Through these ceremonies, loud, bizarre, and often embarrassingly corporeal, the Egyptians blurred the boundary between mortal and bestial, sacred and silly. Survival hinged not on brute force, but on one's willingness to dance like a cat goddess acolyte, paddle like a crocodile racer, or patiently sculpt mud offspring for fertility omens. Each ritual hammered home a cosmic truth. To honor the gods was to embody their animal aspects, or risk finding oneself on the wrong end of a feline swat, a ram's butt, or a hippo's snort. In Part 4, we'll journey beyond festivals into the corridors of daily devotion. How ordinary Egyptians wove animal god worship into their morning routines, market haggles, and domestic dramas. We'll unmask the secret pacts made at shrine thresholds, explore the underground network of animal cultists, and reveal how one misstep in a cat hair-coated temple could spiral into a full-blown divine vendetta. Gear up for the final act, an intimate safari through the domestic wilds of Kemet's zoomorphic obsession. As dawn's first shafts of rose-tinted light slither through your linen shutters, your morning routine begins not with coffee but with a diplomatic briefing. Which animal god gets your first homage today? You swing your legs over the reed mat and tiptoe past your sleeping spouse, lest you step on Bastard's dream cat prowling your own slippers, and pad into the courtyard. There, before the miniature shrine crowned with a carved cat's head, you place 3 drops of milk in a shallow dish. For Bastet, you murmur, may your whiskers remain untangled and your nights peaceful. The milk vanishes as if lapped by unseen paws, and you allow yourself a triumphant grin, one god placated before breakfast. Next, you shuffle to the water jug and pour a bracing cup of Nile water, fresh from your sealed amphora, to honor Sobek. You float a tiny papyrus boat upon the surface, inscribed with, "Thank you for the bounty, great crocodile." If the boat glides true, luck smiles on your fishing nets. If it lists or sinks, you brace for the day's troubles and resolve to sacrifice an extra fish at dusk. Survival note: Never skip this hydrological referendum. Neglect Sobek's ballot, and your morning will be plagued by blocked drainage, angry mosquitoes, and ominous tooth marks in your shoes. Clad in your best half-wool tunic, selected to please both ram-headed Khnum and jackal-headed Anubis, you step into the market square. Here, every stallholder doubles as a miniature priest, hawking wares beside tiny shrines. You barter for onions at Neferti's stand, pausing to rub a sprig of onion against her alabaster statue of Geb before haggling. May the Earth Mother feel your respect, you intone, and she nods, that is, if her painted eyes could nod, relenting on price. Miss this symbolic onion smear, and her mythic decrees might doom your fields to dusty barrenness. At Ubad's fish stall, you pause again, this time before Amit's tiny effigy, the devourer of wicked souls. Though she's part hippo, part lion, part crocodile abomination, you offer a small piece of salted fish with trembling fingers. May my misdeeds remain light in your jaws. It's a gamble. If she accepts, you've cheated cosmic hunger. If she rejects it, you suspect bureaucratic negligence and pray instead at Thoth's nearby desk for a rewrite on your moral transcript. Survival rule: always carry spare salted fish. With your market errands done, you navigate narrow lanes flanked by murals of Horus's falcon-winged victories. Every glance at a painted falcon evokes the eye of Horus's protective power. You finger the ankh-shaped amulet at your throat, whispering, "Horus, watch over my steps," before ducking into a backstreet barbershop. Here, beneath the watchful jackal relief of Anubis's head, barbers shape your hair into the latest pharaonic style. Each snipped lock is tossed into a bronze bowl, etched with the hieroglyph for balance. Rumor says these hair offerings maintain Mawat's harmony. Skip the snips, and you risk unstoppable tangles and cosmic chaos manifesting as a bad hair day. Mid-morning finds you at the communal bakery, kneading dough beneath the mural of Hathor's cow-horned visage. You shape loaves into small musical sistrums, in homage to her patronage of music and joy. As the baker slides them into the kiln, you sprinkle barley grains at Hathor's shrine and hum a short hymn. When the golden loaves emerge, you taste one. Its crisp crust and airy crumb feel like divine applause. Skip this symphony of bread, and you might face a week of flat, lifeless loaves, hardly ideal for sustaining enthusiasm. By midday, the sun rides high overhead, and with it, your recurring devotion to Ra. You unfurl a papyrus parasol emblazoned with his sun disk to create shade. Beneath it, you place 3 small discs of blue fans representing water, sky, and the horizon, chanting, "Ra, may your journey remain uninterrupted." A nearby scribe nods in approval. Scribes monitor solar devotions like quality controllers. If your horizon discs are unevenly spaced, you risk Ra's displeasure manifesting as a sudden gust of scorching wind. At lunch, you gather with neighbors beneath a palm-thatched canopy to share a communal stew. Before tasting, each diner pours a measure of the broth into a common bowl before a statuette of Sekhmet, lioness goddess of healing and plague. May your roar be one of warmth, not wrath, you each recite. A single spoonful vanishes. The stew retains its richness only if Sekhmet's favor stays. Neglect this lion-hearted ritual, and you might wake the next day with fever or worse. A plague of gossip before any medical ailment. In the afternoon, you cross the street to the Temple of Thoth, where a modest library cups a cool alcove. Here, you swipe your personal ostrakhan, etched with your name, across a reed ink dispenser before copying a brief line of sacred text. It's a ritual copying session. Renew the world through written word. You pen in neat hieroglyphs. Each stroke honors Thoth's patronage of writing and wisdom. Messy penmanship incurs his scrawled reproof in your personal record. Avoid a scolding? Head to the scriptorium daily until your records gleam. Later chores call. You sweep the courtyard under the watchful gaze of Bess, squat feline lion protector of households. Bess's temple icon is a small bronze figure you've placed on a low stool. As you sweep, you toss a pinch of fragrant incense onto hot coals in front of him, guiding the smoke toward the walls. Ward our home against nightmares, you request, swaying your broom in measured arcs. If dust accumulates beneath Bess's feet, litters of unasked favors, recipes for domestic strife multiply. Nobody wants a Bess-sparked tantrum by candlelight. As dusk settles, you prepare your evening offering to Taweret, the hippo mother goddess. You mix a small loaf of honeyed bread shaped like a bloated hippopotamus and press it beneath her riverside statue. Protect our births and our hearth, you pray, placing a clay figurine of yourself alongside the loaf. Mothers in your household, jackals in ancestral memory, whisper prayers for healthy children. Confident Toweret's mighty form keeps birthing pangs at bay. Forget this, and expect wailing infants and jinxed pregnancies in the months to come. Night drapes its velvety cloak, and you extinguish your oil lamp. Yet before the wick dies, you leave one last slumage by spilling a drop of oil at the feet of the scarab-shaped solar disk in your foyer. Capri, dung beetle god of sunrise rebirth, appreciates this nocturnal fuel. Your offering ensures your spirit ascends at dawn's first light. Miss this small anointment, and you risk cosmic jet lag, finding yourself stuck in yesterday's dreams long after the sun has sailed overhead. Finally, before collapsing onto your reed mattress, you whisper a collective goodnight. To all animal gods, feline, reptile, bird, and beast, may your domains remain in balance, and may I wake with your favor. The courtyard's shadows flicker, as if in response, and you drift into dreams overseen by Meshenet, goddess of childbirth and fate, herself sometimes depicted with a crane's head. Thus, a day in Kemet unfolds as a tightly choreographed dance with creatures divine and half-beast. From dawn's cat milk homage to night's scarab oil offering, survival demanded mastering your personal bestiary and trading small tokens of devotion for cosmic goodwill. No mere piety or chance. It was a high-stakes game of zoological diplomacy. And that's our final act, the secret domestic wilds where every cup of water, slice of bread, stroke of ink, and sweep of a broom became a negotiation with animal gods capable of bestowing bounty or wreaking havoc. Now you know why an ancient Egyptian peasant carried dried fish, onion sprigs, oyster shells, and cat whiskers in a satchel heavier than most temples' gate keys. Each item a potential lifesaver in a world where every creature's divine shadow loomed large. Thank you for joining this safari through Kemet's zoomorphic obsession, where worshipping animals was the ultimate survival skill, and the only thing fiercer than a lioness goddess was a household that forgot to praise her. May your own rituals, be they whimsical or earnest, keep your own modern gods at bay, and your nights free of restless cats and angry crocodiles. Farewell, fellow travelers. May your daily offerings, cat-eyed glances, and scarab-inspired sunrises guide you safely into tomorrow. Imagine a cosmic WWE match where one contender has a falcon head and the other sports a mysterious out-of-this-world jackal-like snout, and their feud spans millennia. Welcome to the ultimate sibling smackdown in ancient Egypt's mythic cosmos. Horus 1. Origins of a divine feud. Long before human dynasties rose and fell along the Nile, before pyramids pierced the sky and papyrus scrolls recorded every petty grievance, the gods themselves were embroiled in a family meltdown of epic proportions. At the center of it all stood two brothers, Set, the god of chaos, storms, and unsolicited sibling rivalry, and Horus, the hawk-headed sky warrior, poster child for every underdog story ever etched in hieroglyphs. Their conflict wasn't just a mythological soap opera, it shaped the very concept of kingship, justice, and what it took to survive in a world where deities could blink you out of existence if you forgot to bring them beer offerings. To understand their feud, we must rewind to the golden age of the Ennead, the 9 supreme gods of Heliopolis. Atum, the self-created sun deity, had spawned Shu, air, and Tefnut, moisture, who begot Geb, earth, and Nut, sky. From Geb and Nut emerged Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys, the next generation of cosmic influencers. Osiris, the eldest, was the administrative dream, just, benevolent, and so popular that people insisted on worshipping him as the ideal king. Set, in contrast, was the culinary equivalent of revolting rhubarb, unpredictable, storm-loving, and convinced that orderly succession was a corporate conspiracy. Osiris married Isis, the goddess of magic and resourcefulness, becoming both a power couple and the template for every perfect ruler poster ever imagined. Meanwhile, Set wed Nephthys for reasons that remain as murky as the Nile's silt-laden floods. Some say it was political marriage, others claim he just liked her hairstyle. The plot thickens like barley beer when Set, fueled by jealousy and a penchant for dramatic flair, invited Osiris to a lavish banquet. Midway through extravagant courses of fowl and honeyed figs, Set produced a custom-made coffin, sized precisely to Osiris's stately dimensions, and challenged each guest to fit inside. Cue awkward laughter, until it was Osiris's turn. With sinister grin and a swift thud, Set slammed the lid shut, locked the coffin, and tossed it into the Nile, setting off a chain of events that would define cosmic drama for eons. Osiris drowned, his body carried by the river's currents, while Set claimed the throne with the finesse of a reality show villain. Egypt mourned, floods receded, and famine whispered in the mouths of farmers, a clear sign that upsetting the divine status quo had real-world consequences. Enter Isis, stage left, armed with the world's first recorded DIY resurrection project. She scoured the Nile for Osiris's scattered remains, every mummy fragment and severed limb, reassembling him with quilting-level precision. With a few whispered spells that would make Hogwarts blush, she patched him together, temporarily restoring life so he could beget his son, Horus. Then, demonstrating every entrepreneur's savvy, Isis consigned Osiris to the underworld's executive suite, Lord of the Dead, while leaving the teenage Horus to claim his inherited birthright. Horus's early years were a masterclass in orphan hero tropes. Raised in secrecy by Isis in the marshes, fed on magic barley soup, and trained in falcon-winged combat techniques that would make any modern action hero jealous. Yet even in his chrysalis of magical tutelage, the shadow of Set's usurpation loomed large. When Horus finally reached manhood, complete with feathers sprouting from his arms and an eye that glowed like desert moonlight, he set his sights on reclaiming the throne from his uncle. Thus began a celestial custody battle that stretched from the Hall of Two Truths in the underworld to the sun-scorched dunes of the desert. Their first skirmish took place in marshland arenas, where Horus, in full falcon regalia, confronted Set's fiery storms. Set summoned sandstorms so fierce they could sandblast a chariot to oblivion. Horus retaliated with precision strikes, plucking Set's magic eye with a winged talon. The eye rolled across the papyrus-choked waters before rebounding into Set's face. Literally. Injury? Absolutely. The cosmic legal team was called in. Thoth, the feather-plumed scribe, recorded every detail on papyrus scrolls thicker than temple doors. But brotherly combat in ancient Egypt wasn't just about broken body parts. It was conducted under the strict guidelines of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and balance. When negotiations stalled, the dispute escalated to the divine bar, a trial before the Aeneid. Picture a courtroom with colossal pillars, scarab-shaped benches, and judges perched on lotus blossom thrones. Osiris himself presided behind a semi-transparent veil. Set's lawyer, a cobra-skinned demigod with impeccable diction, argued for the legality of seizing the throne by any means necessary. Horus's counsel, a lion-hearted priestess of Isis, countered with emotional testimony about rightful inheritance and filial duty. The trial dragged on like an overcooked lentil stew. Witnesses included sobbing reeds that claimed they saw Osiris's coffin pass by, hiccuping crocodiles called to testify about river currents, and inanimate statues rumored to lean forward in excitement. Set raised procedural objections. Was I served notice of hearing? Is Osiris even present? Horus replied with a literal flourish, de-winging Set's magic eye in open court. Eventually, Osiris banged his mortal-shaped gavel and declared a decree. Horus would inherit Upper Egypt, Set would hold Lower Egypt, and they'd share the middle stretch like two roommates splitting rent. Unsurprisingly, this half-measure pleased no one. Set branded Horus a squatter. Horus accused Set of tyranny. Sure enough, riots broke out among local nomarchs, provincial governors, who had to pick sides, delivering offerings to the hawk or the jackal, all while bracing for divine retribution. Famine, floods, and locust swarms swept the land, symptoms of cosmic indigestion whenever Set's storms met Horus's desert winds. Survival strategy for commoners? Offer both gods libations, a shot of beer for Set's storms, a puff of incense for Horus's wings, and keep your tunic clean in case either deigned to inspect your fields. As years passed, cosmic years which feel longer than mortal centuries, their rivalry evolved. Horus engineered a diplomatic feat. He jailed Set in the back of the underworld storage vault, recording him as missing in action. But Set tunneled out, literally by burrowing through walls of flame, and returned with an army of desert demons. The battle that ensued lit the horizon with lightning and sand-blasting fury. Horus retaliated by summoning a flock of celestial falcons whose screams drove Set's demons mad. After massive divine casualty counts, horseless chariots, exploded storm clouds, they again paused to consult Ma'at, only to find their scales wildly oscillating. During diplomatic intermissions, Osiris tried again to broker peace. He invited them both to a banquet, falcon and jackal's feast, serving transformed offerings, fish wrapped in falcon feathers, barley cakes stamped with Set's storm glyph. Set scowled at the fish. Horus picked feathers out of his mouth. They exchanged thin pleasantries. Set hinted he'd accept co-rule if Horus gave up half his falcon perks. Horus retorted that Set's eye gouging was uncivilized. The banquet ended with Set storming out in a thunderclap, and Horus carelessly stepping on Isis's runway-style linen, triggering another family meltdown. Through it all, the people of Egypt learned that allegiance wasn't just about tribal loyalty, it was survival. Farmers lit dual shrines at dawn, balancing jars of water and bowls of sand to appease both sky falcon and storm jackal. Temple priests specialized in mixed offerings rituals, a falcon statuette flanked by a miniature lightning bolt. Midwives invoked Taweret to ward off birth complications amplified by cosmic tension. Even the common cat, beloved of Bastet, acquired a two-pronged role as messenger and mood monitor. If stray kittens scurried by an alley, neighbors whispered, "Horus's spies are near." By the end of this first chapter in the saga of Horus versus Set, we've traced their origins, from sibling rivalry under the twilight sky of Heliopolis, through body-snatching horror, courtroom theatrics, and storm chaser battles. We've glimpsed how personal vendettas among gods rippled across the mortal realm, flooding fields, sparking temple-level conspiracies, and turning the Nile into a cosmic wrestling ring. Stay tuned for part 2, where the conflict intensifies. We'll follow Horus's quest to reclaim his father's lost crown, Set's guerrilla raids on temple storehouses, and the cunning strategies they deployed. Poisoned offerings, shape-shifting, trickery, and ambushes in moonlit oases. You'll see why surviving in ancient Egypt meant mastering the art of double worship, dodging divine tantrums, and praying your favorite deity didn't schedule midnight meetings at your front door. This is the eternal struggle of Horus and Set, where every dawn and dusk rekindles a feud older than civilization itself. The dust of that disastrous falcon and jackal's feast had barely settled before the next round of hostilities erupted, this time with greater subtlety and far more elaborate backstabbing. Set, smarting from the slight to his regal fury, retreated to his desert stronghold in Upper Egypt. There he assembled an army not of soldiers but of mercenary storms, whirlwinds so vicious they shredded sailcloth and uprooted date palms. Word reached Horus by way of gossiping ibis-headed messengers. Set planned to steal the sacred crown of duality from the temple at Buto and replace it with a crude replica smeared in sand. Without that crown, the ritual of coronation, binding the pharaoh to Horus's divine lineage, would collapse, plunging Egypt into ideological blackout. Determined to protect his people and his own claim, Horus convened his loyal captains, the Falcon Lancers of Edfu, known for their lightning-fast cavalry strikes, and the marsh warriors of the Delta, expert at ambushes among reeds. Under the moon's silver glare, they rode north along the periphery of Set's desert, cleaving through swirling sands that hissed with malevolence. Horus himself led the vanguard, feathers rustling and eyes glinting, inspiring his troops to shout his name until their voices cracked like cracked pottery. At dawn, they reached the Shrine of the Crown. It sat atop a raised platform, flanked by 2 granite sphinxes, each carved in the likeness of Horus and Set, symbols meant to watch over harmony. But over the night, Set's storms had laid siege. One sphinx was half buried in sand, the other cracked. Worse, the crown of duality was gone, replaced by a crude headpiece fashioned from palm fronds and dust. The priests wailed, the temple bell tolled doom. Horus paused, chest heaving, feathers bristling. He sent runners to summon Isis and Nephthys. If anyone could divine Set's hideout, it was the magical sisters. As he waited, he paced the temple courtyard, scribbling urgent petitions on Ostraca, more libations for Thoth, extra offerings for Ma'at, a plea to Bastet to let no cats wander into Set's camp. He even scrawled a desperate note to Sobek: shield the Nile's currents from sand sappers. Isis arrived at noon, her presence a swirl of emerald and gold. With a single glance, she read the temple precincts like an open scroll. He has retreated to the Oasis of Whispers, she announced, a place where the sands themselves speak secrets, and where no mortal path leads. Nephthys unfurled a long coil of silver thread, Isis's guidance cord, and attached one end to Horus's wrist. Follow this, she said, and it will lead you to what you seek. But beware, Set breeds illusions there. True to prophecy, the Oasis of Whispers lay hidden within dunes that shifted hourly. Horus's marsh warriors slogged through ankle-deep sand, steered by the silver thread's pull. Each gust of wind carried voices, mocking jests, cries for mercy, seductive promises of lost treasures. The illusions tested courage. One form resembled Osiris pleading from a pool of molten bronze. Another took the guise of Isis's own voice, begging for aid before dissolving into shrieks. Many faltered, but Horus's falcon lancers kept them focused, reciting his battle cry until the voices gave way to eerie silence. At the oasis's heart lay a pool of black water, rimmed by petrified reeds. At its surface floated the real crown of duality, gleaming with lapis lazuli and gold. But as Horus approached, the water's reflection morphed. In it he saw not a crown, but a gnarled, sand-encrusted circlet, and himself as a failing deity, powerless to protect his people. His legs trembled, his falcon lancers exchanged anxious glances. Then Isis's words echoed, "Your faith in Ma'a is your shield." He closed his eyes, breathed deep, and strode forward, ignoring the rippling terror. With a swift dive of his winged talon, he seized the crown. The pool erupted, water splashed, petrified reeds shattered, and a roar like distant thunder shook the oasis. Set's specter emerged, a hulking figure of wind and storm, eyes glowing like burning embers. "Foolish nephew," Set rumbled, voice trailing dust. "You dare defy me here?" Horus didn't hesitate. He circled above, talons gleaming. Storm winds buffeted him, yet he cut through the gusts with well-timed dives and feints. With each strike, Set recoiled, sand scattering like cursed ash. The marsh warriors formed a phalanx around the pool, hurling javelins stamped with Horus's eye symbol. Isis and Nephthys chanted incantations on the oasis's fringe, weaving protective wards that slowed Set's storms. At last, Horus drew the battle to a crescendo. He swooped low, crown clutched in one talon, and gouged Set's right storm eye, the very eye Set had used to blind Osiris ages ago. The jade orb fell, shattering on the sands, and a howling wind of fury unspooled into silence. Set reeled, sand dissolving like spilled ink, until he collapsed into himself, a dust pillar sucked back into the desert yawl. Horus set the crown once more upon its rightful pedestal. The oasis shimmered back to life, the black pool cleared to mirror azure sky. Petrified reeds blossomed green, and the silver thread vanished in a soft glow. His falcon lancers cheered, marsh warriors raised him aloft. Yet Horus knew this victory was but a pause. Set's spirit could not be destroyed, only contained. He would retreat, scheme anew, and the struggle would resume. Returning to Buto, Horus held a triumphal procession. Priests anointed him with oils of frankincense and myrrh. Citizens laid palm fronds in his path. Temple musicians played fanfares on hammered bronze and reed pipes. Yet Horus's gaze was distant, still wary of the next storm. In his heart, he vowed to forge alliances, with Sobek to steady the Nile's currents, with Bastet to guard against Set's prowlers, and even with unlikely peers like the scales of Ma'at themselves to ensure cosmic balance. By dispatching runners across Egypt with news of the crown's recovery, Horus also reminded nomarchs that his falcon eye watched over every nome. Governors sent gifts, ceremonial cattle, lotus bouquets, jars of precious oil as tokens of fealty, but some balked, hedging bets in case Set ever regained full strength. So Horus dispatched falcon messengers, real birds trained to fly through all hazards, bearing his seal, a single golden feather. Accepting that feather meant loyalty, rejecting it was tantamount to treason. Back in Heliopolis, Osiris convened a council of gods and demigods. They debated long into the night. Should Horus press on and attempt to bind Set permanently in the underworld's vault? Or was it wiser to broker a more enduring peace treaty, even if imperfect? Some argued for absolute victory. After all, Set's chaos had caused famine and plague. Others cautioned against risking total war, which might obliterate human civilization. In the end, they reached a compromise. Horus would reign unchallenged in Upper Egypt, Set in Lower, each bound by rituals administered quarterly to reaffirm balance. Thus, the new status quo emerged. Horus's falcon lances patrolled Upper Egypt's skies. Set's storm shrine stood in Lower Egypt's sands. Twice a year, during the Festival of Crescents and the Rite of Storm Peace, priests from both regions met at the border temples to exchange offerings. A sealed lotus box for a jar of storm-soaked sand, symbolizing their uneasy truce. Crowds gathered, cheering as the falcon and jackal banners fluttered side by side. For a moment, it felt as though the cosmic family feud might finally stabilize. But the memory of Set's desert fury lingered like an unhealed wound. Farmers still offered extra libations to both deities on market days. Fishermen prayed that Horus's wings would guard them against Set's whirlpools. Midwives muttered dual prayers at each birth. And every child knew the ancient tale of how the falcon regained his birthright by pecking out a storm god's eye, an absurd saga of magic, family betrayal, and wind-blown vengeance that reminded mortals just how closely their fate was bound to divine. Tempers. By the end of Part 2, the battle lines were redrawn. Crown recovered, Oasis reclaimed, dual rules cemented. But the uneasy peace between Horus and Set remained a delicate dance. The gods had demonstrated that even they could not escape the cycles of vengeance and reconciliation. For mortals, the lesson was clear. To navigate life on the Nile meant constant vigilance, double-edged devotion, and the humility to acknowledge that in the halls of divine power, no throne was ever secure. Part 3 will plunge us deeper into the aftermath, how Horus consolidated his rule through temple-building projects rivaling mortal architecture, how Set's subterranean cults plotted storm-powered revenge, and how hidden alliances with desert, tribes, with moon gods, even with mortal magicians, shifted the balance in ways no one saw coming. Strap in for more cosmic courtroom dramas, guerrilla raids, and the ever-present threat of sandstorm surprise. The eternal conflict continues. By the time Horus returned to Heliopolis, the Nile's waters had calmed, but the aftershocks of the Crown Recovery campaign still rippled through Egypt. Part 3 plunges us into the consolidation of power, the subterranean rebellions of Set's loyalists, and the secret pacts that shaped the tides of cosmic politics, each move a gamble for mortal survival as much as divine supremacy. Horus's first act was a feat of architectural one-upmanship, the Temple of the Resplendent Eye. Rising on the eastern bank like a falcon's wing unfurled, its central sanctuary housed the recovered crown of duality beneath a glittering false sky of gold leaf. Pilgrims queued for days to glimpse the crown through a peephole carved in obsidian, trading date wine and prayer beads for the privilege. The temple's priests, decked in lapis collars and falcon feather headdresses, extolled Horus's victory. Daily sermons, complete with dramatic reenactments featuring actors in wind machines and clanking hieroglyphic banners. Exposure to such propaganda became mandatory for every gnome at least once per lunar cycle. Absent citizens risked being branded storm sympathizers. Meanwhile, in the desert margins of Lower Egypt, Set's followers gathered beneath black tents, stitched with storm clouds. These clandestine cultists, former sand caravan guards, exiled temple scribes, and a handful of disgruntled fantail pigeons, plotted guerrilla raids on Horus's riverine supply lines. Their weapons of choice, enchanted whirlwinds summoned by incantations scribbled on ostraca, and caltrops shaped like Set's mysterious animal head to shred reed boats. One midsummer night, a flotilla of these storm raiders ambushed a grain convoy near Abydos. The carpenters who built the barges were exiled soon after, fault laid at their feet for not reinforcing hulls against supernatural rafters, while grain prices soared, causing peasants to deliver part of their basic ration to the Temple of the Resplendent Eye out of sheer desperation. To counter this, Horus forged an unlikely alliance with Sobek, the crocodile god. He commissioned a squadron of armored river patrol boats. each prow crowned by a gilded croc's head, and staffed them with crocodile wranglers trained in ecstatic flood rituals. These croco guardians intercepted raiders at dusk, luring them ashore with offerings of salted fish before binding their whirlwind spells in netted baskets. In return, Sobek's priests gained foothold in Upper Egypt's swamplands, where they cultivated new worshippers by promising immunity from locust swarms. Provided villagers reenacted crocodile breeding ceremonies every harvest season. Survival for Delta farmers thus hinged on participating in half naval drills and half fertility rites, lest they be devoured by both crocodile and tax collector. Back in the sacred courts of Heliopolis, the Ennead reconvened to adjudicate creeping grievances. Set's formal complaint, Horus had encroached on the divine prerogative by embellishing the eye motif into every palace lintel. Horus retorted with documented proof of Set's crown theft and the massacre of infernal scorpions in Nubia. The trial dragged over weeks, punctuated by stalls whenever the cobra-headed Wadjet and falcon-headed Nekbet disagreed on seating protocol, Lower versus Upper Egypt precedents. Meanwhile, mortal scribes in government offices paused all administrative work to attend live readings of the trial transcripts, a form of mandatory civic theater that slowed tax collection to a crawl. Amid the legal quagmire, a shadowy figure emerged, a renegade moon priest from Thebes named Pakeru, who claimed to serve Khonsu, but in truth worshipped neither brother. He offered to broker peace by resurrecting Osiris for a limited engagement, enough to adjudicate the dispute once and for all. Isis, torn between maternal pride and cosmic caution, quietly slapped a curse on Pakeru's ritual implements, ensuring any tampering with the underworld's balance would result in unintended consequences. Thebes' civic council then organized a clandestine summit at midnight under the full moon, but Pakeru vanished on the eve of the meeting, leaving behind only a lunar calendar scribbled with ominous glyphs. In response, Horus dispatched a delegation of falcon-masked envoys to the distant desert tribes of the eastern oases. He offered them exclusive rights to quarry sunstone, an iridescent mineral thought to bolster divine sight, in exchange for scouts to monitor storms brewing in Set's domain. These scouts reported that Set's power base lay not in Lower Egypt proper, but in the shifting sands of the Great Eastern Desert, where silent cults of wind worshippers channeled Set's fury into sacred sandstorms. Their high priest, Anchemes, preached that only by unseating Horus entirely could Egypt restore true entropy, and thus usher in a reinvigorated era of cosmic creativity. Realizing that brute force would prolong the conflict, Horus embraced subterfuge. He commissioned a troupe of shape-shifting priests from the cult of Thoth, adepts skilled in temporary ibis guise, to infiltrate Set's desert strongholds. Under cover of swirling dust, they distributed counterfeit storm amulets, replicas fashioned with Thoth's cunning ink formulas that siphoned Set's energies back to the temple of the resplendent eye. When the next sandstorm rose, its winds favored Upper Egypt's stewards, scattering Lower Egypt's farms but leaving Horus's own fields untouched. Villagers, bewildered yet relieved by the paradoxical calm, attributed the miracle to Horus's mercy, renewing their pledges at Nile bank shrines. But Set was not so easily outmaneuvered. He retaliated by enlisting the scorpion goddess Serket to poison the enchanted wells that fed Horus's new irrigation networks. Farmers and soldiers alike fell ill to venomous deliria, until Horus's priest-physicians developed an antidote brewed from lotus petals blessed by both Isis and Taweret. The procedure required communal gatherings, where survivors shared stories of divine betrayal and miraculous cures, fostering a renewed sense of shared destiny under Horus's banner. Meanwhile, in the city of Mendes, worshippers of Set staged a daring public performance, the Festival of the Shattered Majat, where actors clad in jackal masks symbolically tore down representations of balance and erected towering pillars of chaos. The spectacle drew crowds from miles around, until a sudden apparition of a winged falcon, projected by hidden priests using reflective bronze, sent the revelers fleeing in terror. Horus's propaganda wing then circulated images of that falcon silhouette on papyrus broadsheets, warning that Set's festival would summon true anarchy if unchecked. By the close of Part 3, Egypt stood polarized yet strangely unified, the Nile Valley a living tapestry of competing cults, clandestine alliances, and half-forgotten treaties. For commoners, Every dawn meant choosing which offerings to burn first, which temples to visit, and whether today's prayer should begin with Hail Falcon or Roar Storm Lord. Even the lowliest shepherd learned to recite the Scroll of Two Powers at twilight, lest he wander into a stray whirlwind or be swooped up by a celestial falcon patrol. In Part 4, we'll witness the climactic turn, the pharaoh's role as Horus's earthly avatar, the mobilization of an imperial priesthood wielding solar barks as divine warships, and the final confrontation in which Horus must decide whether to banish Set forever or accept that chaos and order are bound in an eternal dance. Survival in Egypt depended on that choice, the triumph of stability or the liberating terror of uncontrolled storms. Strap in for the finale, where sand and sky collide in the ultimate struggle for cosmic sovereignty. As dawn's first rose-tinted fingers stretch across the desert horizon, the hour has come. The mortal pharaoh rises to embody Horus on earth, and the final reckoning with Set looms like a thunderhead. In this concluding chapter, we witness the transformation of Egypt's king into a living falcon, the raising of solar warships, the ultimate ritual that binds storm and sky, and the choice that will shape eternity itself. The pharaoh's coronation at sunrise is no mere ceremony. It's the moment a man becomes Horus incarnate. Cloaked in linen dyed the color of fresh papyrus sprouts, he strides barefoot across a path of gilded scarab shells laid out by tens of thousands of acolytes. Each shell crunch underfoot echoes a pledge, I stand with balance. At the temple steps, the high priest anoints him with oils of frankincense, myrrh, and lotus extract, a mixture reputed to heighten one's senses to divine frequencies. The pharaoh's eyes roll back. For a heartbeat, falcon wings shimmer beneath his mortal skin, and his voice booms, I am the Eye unblinking. The crowd falls silent, then erupts. In that moment, heaven and earth merge. Behind the temple walls, the Council of 12 sits in motionless vigil. Isis presides, her gaze fierce as she watches her son's earthly counterpart. Thoth quills notes on a papyrus scroll thicker than a tomb chamber, while Lakhmaat's feather tilts ever so slightly as if weighing the cosmic outcome. Sobek stands by, ready to commit Croc patrol forces, and Bastet spins a distaff of protective spells. Even Nephthys, shadowy consort of Set, stands uncertain, torn between family loyalty and the mother-daughter bond that binds her to Isis. Meanwhile, in Set's sandstone fortress beyond the western dunes, the storm god musters his final gambit. From spiral spires carved with swirling glyphs, he summons a legion of desert jinn, whirlwinds given shape and will. Each tempest is inscribed with curses. Let crops shrivel, let waters steam, let sand invade every tomb. Set's council of storm priests chants in a choir of howling wind, their voices rising in a gale that cracks obelisks like brittle reeds. The time of order is ended, they roar. Chaos shall reign. But Horus's response is swift and majestic, the mobilization of the solar bark fleet. Just as Ra travels the sky in his boat each dawn, so too does the pharaoh command naval vessels carved from cedar and bronze, each prow affixed with a gilded falcon head. By moonlight, they glide across the Nile toward the delta, their sails painted with the crown of duality. Soldiers in falcon feathered helmets stand at readiness, priests brandish incense burners shaped like lotus buds, and musicians on board drums carved from crocodile hides. The fleet's mission, to intercept Set's storm djinn at the river's mouth before they can scour the land. At dawn's break, the two forces meet where Nile waters meet the shifting sands. The solar barks advance in stately formation. Meanwhile, Set's djinn whirl in from the desert, their forms half vapor, half coil, stirring sand into terrible spires. Horus's fleet responds with trumpets of pure silver, each note a command that resonates through water and wind. The priests on board unleash squadrons of trained falcons, real birds whose wings beat against the gale. The falcons swoop into the storm clouds, their talons tearing at summoned winds. Each fallen feather becomes an anchor, causing the jinn to stall and wail. On the temple terraces in Thebes and Memphis, crowds gather for live projection. Giant polished bronze mirrors angled to reflect the battle across city walls. Mothers clutch children, merchants pause trade, and scribes hurriedly copy each unfolding moment into hurried dispatches, sending them on falcon messengers to every nome. A hush falls as the storm Jinn clash with falcon riders, sand colliding with sailing ships and thunder rolling like drowned chariots. Amid the battle, the pharaoh's voice lifts in ritual invocation. O Ra, O Ma'at, O brothers and sisters of the Ennead, witness your servant's duty. With each call, the crown of duality upon his brow glows with lapis and gold, flaring with solar power. The falcon riders press forward, carving through the outer Jinn ranks until only a central vortex remains. Set's avatar in a whirling maelstrom of dust and fury. Horus's personal guard, the falcon lancers of Edfu, charge, their spears tipped with scarab-shaped blades. Set emerges, coalescing into a towering figure of sand and storm, his jackal head snapping. "Mortal puppet," he hisses, "you dare bind my tempest?" The pharaoh strides forward, talisman in hand, a small obsidian eye carved from Osiris's underworld scale. Raising it high, he intones the sacred formula learned from Isis. "By eye of truth, by heart of balance, I bind you." The eye glows, and a shockwave ripples through the vortex. The central storm reels, then condenses into a single grain of sand, clutched in the pharaoh's palm. Set's cry echoes as he shrinks back into the desert winds. The Jinn unravel, their forms dissipating like mist. The Nile calms. The sun breaks through low clouds, painting the battlefield in gold. Horus stands victorious, though not unscathed. His tunic bears sand scars, and his voice bears a tremor from the divine invocation. Yet he has proven that order can master chaos. Back at Heliopolis, the Council of 12 convenes under Ma'at's watchful scale. Isis steps forward, tears in her eyes, and lifts the obsidian grain. "This is Set's spirit-bound," she declares. "No longer shall storms plague our fields." Thoth seals the grain within a golden shrine, an eternal talisman to safeguard Egypt's harmony. A hush falls, even Ma'at's feather balances evenly. But the Ennead's decision carries gravitas. Absolute eradication of Set would unbalance creation, for chaos and order are two sides of the cosmic coin. Instead, they decree a new covenant. Set's power is confined to the desert of eternal dunes, a sanctum where his storms may rage but touch no mortal domain. Twice a year, during the festival of harmonized horizons, priests of Set may visit the border temples to offer libations of immaculate water and clear incense, reaffirming the covenant and preventing his prison from cracking. The pharaoh's final act is to embed that covenant at the very heart of human governance. A new decree is carved onto temple walls from Elephantine to the western desert. Let every citizen inscribe a prayer of balance at dawn. Let every child learn the dual names of Horus and Set. Let every farmer leave 3 drops of oil at the threshold to honor both sky and storm. Thus, no heart remains pure, no soul untested by the duality that defines existence. On the night of the Festival of Harmonized Horizons, tens of thousands gather at the border temple of Kam Ambo, where twin shrines stand side by side, one falcon-headed, one jackal-headed. Priests and priestesses, falcon riders and storm guards, commoners in simple linen garments, and even the silent statues of Sobek and Bastet preside in silent vigil. At midnight, a trumpet call sounds. Water from both shrines flows together in a golden basin, and incense smoke spirals upward in balanced coils. The crowd chants in unison, "Ma'at endures," balance prevails. For a moment, the world stands still, and so the eternal conflict reaches its truce. Horus rules the sky of human affairs, ensuring justice and kingship. Set commands the desert storms beyond mortal reach, safeguarding the creative spark of chaos. Both are necessary, both endure. Egypt thrives in the tension between them. As the pharaoh retires to his inner chamber, he removes the crown of duality and places it upon Isis's lap. "I am but your son," he whispers. "Guide me, mother, that I may serve balance." Isis smiles and adjusts his golden falcon cloak. Outside, a gentle breeze stirs, carrying the scent of lotus and sand. The Nile murmurs its ancient song. And now, dear viewer, we close this saga of sibling rivalry writ in wind and wing. Remember, survival in ancient Egypt wasn't mere obedience to a single deity, but mastering the dance between order and chaos, and knowing that sometimes the mightiest storm must live, so that the gentlest breeze may carry life. Until next time. May your scales tip always toward balance, and may your spirit soar unhindered by tempest.